A group of heroes is headed into the dark forest on a mission to liberate their home. They all wield powerful weapons known as regalia, weapons that grant them power far greater than what any human is capable of, so they are fully prepared to defeat the dark beasts in the forest. However, the second they arrive, their driver gets yeeted into oblivion by one of the dark beasts. Everyone else springs into action, and their leader, Stefan, orders everyone to get in formation as they make a charge straight into the dark beast den. The cutlass user begins slicing up all the monsters in his path with his whirlwind technique, and Stefan uses his blade to slice the heads off a giant snake monster he was fighting. However, even with its head severed, the snake keeps trying to bite Stefan, but at the last second, Alicia is able to stop it by piercing its eye with her sword to finish it off. So far, the team has been doing pretty well, and now that all the weak monsters in the area have been dealt with, the team ventures deeper into the cave to track down the Beast Lord of the South. They eventually arrive at the center of the cave and come face to face with Clevites of the Moonlight, and you know it's going to be bad when the monster has an aura farming entrance. Everyone can feel the intensity coming from the beast, but Stefan is confident that he and his team can overcome anything with the power of friendship. Never mind, friendship isn't going to save them here. After seeing Clevites paint the wall with Stefan's blood, I'd be questioning whether being a hero is even worth it. But the tank seems to think he can do better, so he jumps into the air to attack it, but he's almost immediately beheaded midair. The others are finally starting to realize that they don't stand a chance in a direct battle, but it's too late for them to retreat or regroup because Clevites has begun picking them off one by one with its tail. The others are confused because they can't figure out how Clevites is getting to them so quickly, but Alicia realizes that the tail attacks are coming from their shadows, so she tells everyone to jump to create some distance from the shadow. Thanks to her quick thinking, she manages to parry the beast's attack and survive, but the others aren't so lucky. One of the surviving heroes jams his spear into the ground to summon an earth golem, but even the ground here is under the control of Clevis, so the hero can't continue his golem and several tail spikes emerge from the ground and slice him up. The lance user tries to charge forward and overpower Clevites, but while the dude is fighting for his life over here, Clevites is casually wondering how things as weak as humans managed to get into his lair. He then finishes off the rest of the heroes, so the only one left alive is Alice, who has been flying around with her sword to avoid getting hit. She eventually manages to get close enough to Clevites' face to land a good hit on him, but even her strongest attack barely leaves a scratch on Clevites. Meanwhile, Clevites is still deep in thought because he can't fathom the stupidity that led humans to attack his land when he hasn't had beef with them for over 1,000 years. But if they are going to keep bothering him like this, then he's going to need to come up with a more permanent solution. But first he has to deal with Alice, so he slashes her limbs off and sends her falling to her doom. A little while later, Clevites crash lands in the human kingdom, and he's here with vengeance on his mind. He was perfectly fine leaving the human kingdom alone as long as they had minded their business, but they just had to go trying to conquer his land. From what the heroes said before the fight, they were sent to fight by the king of Haydn, so he's going to need to have a word with him about this. The kingdom's archers are alerted to the threat, so they show up and take aim at Clevites. But unsurprisingly, those arrows do absolutely no damage. But despite the clear power difference, they continue attacking like it's going to do something. Clevites is just here for the king, so he was initially going to ignore all the other humans, but since they are attacking him now, he slaughters them all on his way to the castle. The castle guards begin prepping the rest of their defenses and aim their catapults at Clevites, but their weapons still have no effect on him, so Clevites rips through the castle walls with ease. Inside the castle, one of the guards goes to warn the king of Clevites' attack, but the king already heard all the crashing sounds, so he pretty much knows what happened. The heroes he sent must have failed to kill Clevites because the weapons of Haydn weren't strong enough yet. He realizes that Clevites is most likely here for him, so there would be no point in fleeing now because Clevites would just hunt him down. However, even if he is going to end up dying, the king wants to seal off the forge so the flames of Haydn are never extinguished. Meanwhile, Clevites is outside, and he is wondering why the humans here are so pitiful compared to the heroes that attacked him. At first he thought it might have been some kind of special training, but after the castle's guards fire Haydn metal ballistas at him, he realizes that their strength was in their weapons. Thinking back, even though it didn't do much damage, the sword Alicia used to slash his horn actually left a mark which shouldn't have been possible. Even if humans are nothing more than insects to him, an insect with a stinger can still be dangerous, so Clevites plans to get to the bottom of this. At the same time, down in the depths of the castle, the king goes to check on the forge of Haydn, but suddenly the walls around him begin to shake, so he realizes Clevites must be nearby and hurriedly seals the forge off. Moments later, Clevites rips the roof off the castle, and as soon as he spots the king, he calls him out. The king tries to act unfazed and tells Clevites that he has no right to speak to him like that. But Clevites tells the king to watch his tone because if he wanted to, he could wipe out all the humans in an instant. And not just the people of Haydn either, he could go after the people of the neighboring kingdoms as well. He could have killed the king by now. But even if he did that, another king would eventually pop up and disturb Clevites' land again. So he is giving the king of Haydn one chance to explain himself. He wants to know why he ordered those heroes to attack him. But instead of actually explaining the reason, the king practically spits in Clevites' face, saying a beast like him could never understand human ambition. Clevites has heard all he needs to hear, so he slices the king's head off and begins making plans to wipe all humans from the face of the earth. However, as he is walking out of the destroyed city, he comes across a baby crying after its mother had been crushed under some falling debris. Clevites feels no sympathy for it whatsoever, so he decides to keep walking. But then the baby's mother calls out to him and asks Clevites to save her baby. Clevites is a bit stunned by the mother's bold requests, so he reminds her that he was the one who brought ruin to this kingdom, and he has even decided to wipe out all humans, so why would he want to save a human child? The mother understands his point, but regardless of what the adults may have done to deserve Clevites' wrath, she insists that the baby has done nothing to deserve such a fate. Clevites doesn't see the point in arguing about the baby's innocence since all humans are the same to him, but he's willing to play along, so he asks the mother if she can prove the baby's worth to him. The mother knows she won't be able to prove anything to Clevites, especially since she's going to die soon, but she swears that if Clevites agrees to save the baby, he will eventually discover its worth on his own. The mother dies shortly after and Clevites walks off completely unfazed, but he does end up coming back for the baby, so the mother's speech must have gotten through to him. He still isn't entirely sure if it's a good idea to take this baby, but compared to his long lifespan, a human child's life is barely noticeable, so he is willing to look after it for the sake of curiosity. In the land of Ethia, there are 5 humanoid races, the first of which are the Duns, a kingdom of people with large numbers and great skill in architecture. The next are the Orgites, a kingdom of people who excel in hunting and medicine. The Sladens, aquatic people skilled in swimming and fishing. The Benti, barbaric people who are strong individually, but couldn't work together even if their lives depended on it. And finally, there's the kingdom of Haydn, or rather, there was the kingdom of Haydn because it's gone now. They were the oldest of the humanoid races and had great skill when it came to forging weapons, which is how the blades of Haydn were made. There is a lot more to the world than just Ethia, but beyond the continent's borders, it is surrounded by darkness on all sides. This darkness is where the dark beasts live and the 4 dark beast lords, one of which is Clevites, so humans have never set foot outside Ethia. Back at Clevites' cave, he brought the baby back with him, and after scaring all the beasts to make sure none of them eat him, he curls up next to the child to rest, but now he's not sure what to do with him. He can give him some of his energy to keep his strength up so he doesn't have to worry about dying anytime soon, but the baby is currently covered in poop. Clevites did not sign up to deal with this, so he picks the baby up and drops him into a pit of spiders without a second thought. The baby immediately starts crying, and I probably would too if I was surrounded by spiders, but Clevites assures him that he's safe. The spiders in that pit only eat poop, so he dropped him in there to get cleaned up, but that doesn't make it any less scary. Even after he pulls him back up, he won't stop crying, and Clevites is starting to get sick of all the constant wailing. But as a dark beast lord, he can't go back on his decision, so he's going to have to see this through to the end. But to make sure the baby survives, he's going to need a human to look after it, so he walks over to the heroes he killed to see if any of them can be useful. Moments later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself staring at the sky, but she clearly remembers getting killed, so she wonders if this is the afterlife. However, once she sees Clevites, she realizes she's still in his cave. She instinctively reaches for her sword, but Clevites tells her he already threw all the weapons along with the bodies of her allies down into the ravine. However, she looked like she'd be useful, so he decided to revive her. Right now, Alicia is basically a walking corpse, and the only reason she can move is because of the dark energy that he imbued her with, but that's enough explaining for now, so he tells Alicia to make herself useful and give him some milk. It takes a moment for her to register what Clevites just asked her to do, but he isn't joking, and this isn't a request either because he really needs that milk, so he uses his powers to force Alicia to comply. However, after several minutes of suckling, Clevites finally realizes this isn't working. Alicia tells him it obviously wouldn't work because she's never had a baby before and she doesn't understand why someone like Clevites would even want to keep a baby alive in the first place. Clevites doesn't intend to explain his reasons to her, but since Alicia can't provide milk, he is going to need her to be useful in other ways. The baby won't die as long as Clevites keeps giving it energy, but it will be perpetually hungry, so he asks Alicia if there's any other way to get milk. Alicia can't disobey Clevides's command, so she tells him that you will need to hire a nursing mother to feed the baby, but to do that you would have to go to a human town, and with his current form he's guaranteed to cause a panic, so he decides to take a human form so he can blend in. He doesn't have much to go off, so he decides to take the form of the baby's mother and says he will be called Kren, while the baby's name will be Luna. Kren tells Alicia to lead the way to the nearest village, but before that they need to stop so Alicia can wash Luna's blanket, but while she's washing it, she realizes the blanket has the Haydn royal crest on it. Meanwhile, back in what's left of Haydn, the news of what happened has spread, so a scout was sent to inspect the damage. He can't believe that a single dark beast was able to cause all this destruction, but this is exactly why he thought it would be too reckless to attack one of the beast lords. And the timing couldn't have been worse, because the day of the attack was the day the crown princess was supposed to flee the kingdom with her son. Back by the river, Alicia confronts Kren and asks if he knew that Luna was from the royal family when he took the baby. Kren has no idea what she's talking about, so Alicia points out that the cloth Luna was wrapped in had the royal emblem on it, and only members of the royal family can use it. Now that Kren thinks about it, the woman he got Luna from was crushed under the rubble of the castle, so it makes sense that Luna would be a member of the royal family. But that doesn't really change Kren's plans. Alicia asks what he means by rubble of the castle, so Kren bluntly tells her that he destroyed Haydn and killed the king last night. Alicia can't believe Haydn was really destroyed, but Kren reminds her that they were the ones who attacked him first. Kren doesn't think it's a big deal, but Alicia says it's a really big deal, because if Kren really wiped out Haydn, then Luna must be the last member of the royal family, and that means tons of people are going to be coming after him. Kren asks why, so Alicia explains that only members of the Haydn royal family are able to use the special forging techniques used to make the Haydn weapons. But immediately after she says that, she realizes she gave away too much information. Kren hadn't given much thought to what he wants to do with Luna till now, but if he's really that important, then Kren wouldn't mind making him the new king of the humans. That way, Kren would be able to control everything from behind the scenes and crush the humans once and for all if they step too far out of line. But right now, they still need to get some milk for Luna, so he tells Alicia to get moving. Alicia still doesn't know why Kren is so attached to Luna, but she is certain that if anything were to happen to him, he would probably kill every last human on the continent, so Alicia needs to protect him at all costs. A few hours later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself chained up in the back of a carriage. Kren is glad to see that she's finally awake, so he calmly informs her that they were captured a little while ago, but Kren doesn't really feel like doing anything about it since Luna is sleeping right now. Alicia, on the other hand, is very concerned, mostly because she doesn't understand how the soldiers managed to subdue Kren so easily. She asks him if he is as weak as a regular human when he is in this form, but Kren tells her that's not it. He still has all his powers, but this is the first time he has ever taken a human form, so he had no idea that a human skull is so fragile. Anyway, he says that now that he is aware of his body's weakness, no one will be able to catch him by surprise again. Alicia is glad to hear that, but if Kren is already back to full strength, Alicia asks why he hasn't broken them out of here already. Kren tells her that right now he is acting the part of an ordinary human, and until he has successfully made Luna king, he doesn't want to reveal his true identity. Besides, part of the reason Kren is doing all this is so he can learn about human nature, so he is interested in seeing the more sinister side of humanity. On that note, he doesn't really understand what's going on here, so he asks Alicia to explain things to him. Alicia tells Kren that they were attacked by bandits, the lowest of the low in society. And from the way things look right now, the bandits intend to sell all the survivors to a slave trader. Kren asks how strong these bandits are meant to be, and as far as humans go, Alicia says they aren't that strong, but they will resort to dirty tricks without hesitation, so they are really hard to deal with. Alicia assures Kren that most humans are nowhere near as scummy as bandits, so he shouldn't base his opinion of humanity off them. Eventually, they arrive at the bandits' base, and all the captives are told to get moving. One of the men refuses to let himself be sold into slavery, so he tries making a run for it. But with his arms shackled and his legs weighed down, he isn't very fast. The bandits notice him trying to escape, so one of them takes a knife out and throws it into the man's back, killing him in an instant. The other bandit then announces that anyone who tries to run away or disobey them will meet the same fate, and all the remaining captives are so terrified that no one can bring themselves to fight back. Kren finds this whole dynamic intriguing, but before he and Alicia could continue walking, one of the bandits comes over and tells Alicia she needs to follow him. Kren lets them take Alicia since he still wants to see how all this will play out, and all of a sudden, a woman yells at him for not working. Since Kren is technically a slave now, he decides to play along and goes over to see her since she called for him. But as soon as she sees that he's holding a baby, she starts calling for a woman named Nell. Nell is the poor slave who's forced to do all the hard work at the tavern and she's a bit clumsy, so when Carm calls her name, she ends up falling over. Carm yells at Nell for dropping all the sheets on the floor, and Nell apologizes, but that aside, Carm tells Nell that she will be in charge of looking after this boy's baby, and as soon as Nell sees Luna, her eyes light up because she really likes babies. Meanwhile, Alicia is brought to the office of the bandits' vice captain, Vroko, but Vroko yells at the two of them for not calling him boss. The other bandits think he's just joking around, but Vroko says he's serious, and if they refuse to acknowledge him as their boss, then he's going to have to let his pet Betty loose. Alicia is shocked that Vroko managed to acquire a troll monster from the west, and she's even more shocked by the fact that he just trained it as a loyal pet. Moving on to business, Vroko pulls out the bag of gems that Alicia was carrying when the bandits captured her. He knows that these gems can only be found in Luna Mountain, but that place is the territory of Clevitis, one of the four lords of dark beasts, so there's no way an ordinary person would have been able to acquire or even get close to the area. He also knows that the Kingdom of Haydn recently sent out a squad of heroes to battle Clevitis, but the reports say that the heroes all failed. Vroko also happens to know that one of the heroes was a woman who looks an awful lot like Alicia. He mentions how Clevitis destroyed the Kingdom of Haydn after the failed hero attack, and it was a real tragedy for everyone involved. But for the Raven Bandit group, it was the best news they could hope for. Vroko then pulls out a red blade, and Alicia is stunned because she can't believe someone like him possesses a monohiterate sword. Vroko boasts about how swords made from this metal grant the user incredible strength, but he has never actually felt that surge of power because the one in his hand right now is a fake, since members of the royal family are the only ones who can make real magic swords. He tells Alicia that their bandit group sells two things, slaves and fake magic swords, since most people are too stupid to tell the difference. The rumors say that all the members of the royal family died at the hands of Clevitis, and if that turns out to be true, then the price for magic swords is going to skyrocket in no time. He is sure that the 13 regalia which were handcrafted by the king before his death would fetch a high price, but all of them were reportedly lost in the battle against Clevitis. However, with Alicia under his command, Vroko thinks he can find the regalia and sell them to make a huge profit, so he tells the two to make her lead them to the regalia first thing in the morning, and after that, they are free to do what they want with her. Meanwhile, Klein is diligently playing the role of a servant at the tavern. Nell is busy feeding Luna, so he has no reason to cause any trouble, but a few moments later, a bandit comes over and yells at Nell to get him some more beer. Nell puts Luna down and goes to get the beer, but even though she's doing what he asked of her, the bandit still kicks her in the back. After that, another bandit yells for Klen to bring him some meat, so Klen does as instructed and serves the bandit the meat with no complaint. The bandits are surprised that Klen isn't trying to disobey them at all, and they think he's going to make a great slave, but Carm still thinks there's something creepy about him. From the horn on his head, she assumed that Klen must have some Auberite blood in him, but his skin is way too pale for that, and his eyes seem way too cold for a regular boy. At the same time, Nell is minding her own business and carrying the beer when all of a sudden, one of the bandits intentionally sticks out his foot to trip her. Nell falls over and shatters the beer kegs on the ground, so the bandit starts acting like this is her fault and drag her outside to be punished. The bandits just enjoy seeing Nell in pain, so after beating her up, they casually start walking home as usual. Klen then uses his shadows to devour their bodies so there's no evidence of their deaths. After that, he finds Nell, and he asks her to lend him her milk because Luna is hungry again. Nell doesn't really understand what's going on, but she agrees to feed Luna, and while Luna is eating, Klen says he has a few questions he would like to ask Nell. He wants to know who she is and why she is with the bandits, so Nell begins explaining her backstory. She was born in the pirate camp, and although she never knew who her father was, she can clearly remember her mother. Things were never good for them, and from what Nell can remember, her mother was constantly mistreated by the bandits, but no matter how bad it got, she always endured it for Nell's sake. However, around the time Nell turned 12, her mother suddenly disappeared. Nell has no idea whether she died or managed to escape, but once her mother was gone, the bandits turned their attention to Nell instead and started hurting her for fun. As a result, Nell has lost most of her teeth, and she can only hear out of one of her ears now. Things got a little better for her when Carm took her in, and since then, the bandits stopped targeting Nell for their sick games. Plus, now she actually has a job to do. She makes lots of milk, so she can fill the stomachs of starving babies. Klen thinks Nell's story is intriguing, but from what Alicia told him, one has to have a child before they can produce milk, so he asks Nell where her child is. Nell's expression becomes sullen as she explains that she doesn't have one because it was a stillbirth. When Carm initially broke the news to her, Nell fell into a deep depression, and she honestly wished she would die at that point. But when she opened her eyes the next morning, she found a random baby suckling on her for milk. She knew the baby would starve if left on its own, so she let him drink as much as he wanted, and after that, more babies were given to her to feed, which is how she became the resident wet nurse. That's why even though her life hasn't been great, she wants to do her best to make sure that babies that need her milk are happy. Clan has heard enough, so he thanks Nell for telling him her story and asks her to come with him. He wants to hire her as Luna's wet nurse, and while he doesn't trust humans in general, he can tell that Nell is a good person. Nell says she's happy to receive such an offer, but she doesn't think Clan can really get out of here because he is a slave just like her, so she politely turns down his offer. Meanwhile, a few of the bandits are leading Alicia along a rope bridge, and once she realizes she's being led to a flooded mine shaft, she gets a really bad feeling. Down at the bottom of the mine, she sees a man walking up to the edge of the pier with a hook in his hands. The bandits all laugh because they know what's about to happen, but even though it's clear that he's being set up, the man still plans to go through with it because the bandits promised they would let him and his wife go if he retrieves the treasure at the bottom of the lake. The man dives in and begins swimming down to the bottom of the lake, but Alicia yells at him to get out of there immediately because according to the legends, this shaft is full of monsters. Moments later, those monsters jump out of the water with the man in their jaws and proceed to devour him right in front of his devastated wife. Alicia is sickened by what she just witnessed, but the bandits seem like they really enjoyed watching that man get ripped to pieces. The monsters in the water are called Arvensis, and they showed up during the Great Flood 300 years ago, and now they are confined to the water of these mines. Even Hero Cordwar, the strongest hero of his generation, was no match against them. And that was when there was still solid land to fight on, but now that mine is completely flooded, it's practically impossible to defeat the Arvensis. The magic sword that the old hero used was called Stream Splitter, and Alicia assumes that's the treasure the bandits told that man to go retrieve. But even though they promised him freedom in exchange for risking his life, the bandits never had any intention of letting him live even if he had managed to come back alive somehow. She calls them irredeemable scumbags, but the bandits tell her she's in no position to talk to them like that when her hands are bound, her feet are shackled, and they are on a bridge hundreds of meters in the air. There are even a dozen more bandits waiting to get the chance to torture her all night long, and Fido is particularly excited to make her scream. Given the situation, Alicia doesn't have many options left, and she was really hoping she wouldn't have to rely on Clevetess's curse, but it looks like she has no choice now. She immediately dislocates her shoulder and rotates her arms over her head to smash Fido's head between the shackles and make him cut the bridge's rope with his blade. This sends the two of them tumbling to the rocky mine below, and there is a disturbing crack sound as Alicia's body hits the floor, killing her instantly. The bandits look down, and when they see Alicia's dead body, they start panicking because they were supposed to get her to lead them to the 13 regalia that were lost. Meanwhile, down at the bottom of the cave, Alicia regains consciousness thanks to the curse of immortality that Clevetess put on her. Thanks to the curse, she can't die, but the curse doesn't grant her regeneration, so she is currently paralyzed from the neck down and she has no idea what to do. Every bone in her body is broken and she has already lost a ton of blood, so there's no way she'll be able to get out of here on her own. But it'll be bad if the bandits come down here and figure out that she's still alive, so she begins struggling in an attempt to move until the blood from her body rises into the air and Clevetess appears in front of her. Alicia is surprised to see Clevetess in such a tiny form, but he says he's only like this because he is manifesting himself from the blood magic in Alicia's body. This magic blood is what's keeping her immortal body alive, so if she bleeds out entirely, then she'll die for real. However, as long as she remains useful, Clevetess promises to replace all the blood in her system, and once he does that, she should be able to recover from the damage she has taken. Alicia is glad to hear that, but she notices that Clevetess hasn't started healing her yet, so she asks him what he's waiting for. Clevetess says he will heal her eventually, but before that, he has a question he wants to ask her. He recently found the perfect candidate for a wet nurse for Luna, and even as a demon, Clevetess could tell that Neru is being mistreated here. So he offered her a chance to escape and live a better life as Luna's wet nurse. But to his surprise, Neru turned him down directly. Clevetess asks Alicia if she has any idea why Neru would turn down such a great opportunity, and from what Alicia can tell, she thinks it's because Neru sees Clevetess as a slave incapable of fulfilling his promise. Bandit groups like this don't just allow people to leave, and anyone who does manage to escape inevitably ends up getting hunted down by the bandits. And after being born and raised in this environment, Neru probably believes there's no way she could possibly be free. Clevetess asks her if there's any way to resolve the issue, and Alicia thinks the most straightforward method would be to kill all the bandits in the camp. That way there'd be no one left to pursue Neru if she escapes, so she would be much more willing to agree to Clevetess's offer. Alicia says it should be easy for Clevetess to slaughter all the bandits here by himself with how much power he has, but Clevetess says he doesn't want to do that. He can't risk anyone finding out that he has left the mountain because the people might try to take advantage of it and launch an attack on Clevet's land while he's gone. Instead, he says he wants Alicia to do it since it would be normal for a hero like her to slay a group of bandits during her travels. Alicia tries to protest, but Clevet cuts her off and says she should just do it, right before pumping her full of blood to regenerate her body. Bandits eventually make it down to the bottom of the mine to look for Alicia's body, but when they finally track her down, they are horrified as they witness her body bending and twisting in inhuman ways. Each time a bone snaps back into place or tissues reconnect, Alicia is put through excruciating pain. But by the time it's finally over, she's back to full health. The bandits have no idea how she managed to survive a fall like that, but they don't really care because as long as Alicia is still alive, they can force her to take them to the 13 Regalia. They know she is a hero, so they need to be cautious, but they assume they should be fine as long as they jump her. However, one guy decides to charge ahead and face her alone, so he strikes Alicia on the shoulder, but after the pain she just experienced, this is nothing. Alicia then grabs his arm and punches him straight in the face before taking his sword and eye patch. She still doesn't like the fact that she's being forced to fight, but these bandits are irredeemable, so she needs to put them down. Now that Alicia is taking care of the bandits, all Clen has to do is find Neru and convince her that she really can escape this place. Meanwhile, Neru returns to the tavern and Carm has been waiting for her because she was worried. She hates seeing Neru get abused and beaten up like this, but there's nothing she can do to stop the bandits. Neru appreciates Carm's kindness a lot, but there's still a lot of work to be done, so Carm asks her to start clearing away the dishes. Carm notices that Neru is in an awfully good mood for someone who just got beaten up, so she asks her if something good happened. Neru wouldn't exactly describe it as something good, but she admits that it did make her happy. She asks Carm if she knows what the outside is like, and Carm is a bit taken aback because Neru has never asked a question like that before. Carm asks her why she wants to know, so Neru explains that she was born in the camp, so she has never gotten to experience what it's like outside, but Carm, on the other hand, was brought here, so she probably knows a thing or two about it. Carm admits that she knows of the outside world, but she doesn't have many good memories of it because like most of the other women that were brought here, they either had their homes destroyed or never had homes to begin with, so it's not something they talk about often. Carm asks why Neru suddenly became so curious about the outside, so Neru explains that someone asked her if she wants to leave. Carm smacks the shit out of Neru for daring to say something like that out loud, especially when there are still bandits in the tavern. The bandits here think of them as nothing more than slaves that can be discarded when they are no longer useful. That's why all of them had to band together and look out for one another, so Neru can't be saying things like that if she wants to survive here. Just then, Broko happens to walk in and he heard the whole thing, so Carm is really nervous about what he might do. She asks Broko what he's doing here since he rarely ever comes down to the tavern, but he just says he heard that a baby arrived recently, so he wanted to check it out. Carm asks Neru to tell Broko where the baby is, and last time Neru checked, Luna was in the stables, so Broko says he will go see for himself. But before he leaves, he asks Neru to come with him, and from the way he said that, Carm can immediately tell that it can't be good. She tries to stop Broko, but she doesn't have any authority here, so there's not much she can do, and Neru is completely oblivious to the fate that awaits her. Once Broko has taken Neru away, Carm slams her hands on the table in anger because Neru was the only one who would take care of the babies around here, but Broko doesn't seem to care about that at all. She tries convincing herself that there's nothing she could have done, and that Neru brought this on herself for talking about leaving in front of Broko, but she still feels really bad about what's about to happen to her. Just then, Clen shows up holding Luna, and Carm is startled at first because she didn't hear him come in, but then she realizes that he's probably just here because he wants to feed Luna. Unfortunately, she tells him that Neru is gone and she probably won't be coming back. Carm doesn't like it, but this is just the way things are here. Clen doesn't understand what Carm means by that, so he demands an explanation, and one look at Clen's eyes tells Carm that he's very serious about making sure Neru is alright. Meanwhile, Broko leads Neru down an old stairwell, and Neru is amazed because even though she has lived her whole life in this camp, she has never seen this place before. Broko explains that this used to be part of a large magic ore mine, and magic ores have a ton of uses. For example, the lamp Broko is holding uses magic ores crushed into insect oil to produce the fire, and before Broko became a bandit, he used to spend a lot of time researching the applications of magic ores, particularly ways to mix magic ores with various liquids to create interesting effects. By the way, just ignore those skulls on the floor because those aren't a bad sign or anything. Just then, Broko turns out the lights and Neru begins to panic because this place is pitch black, so she can't see anything in here. She pleads with Broko to turn the lights back on, and Broko obliges, but once Neru can see again, she is horrified to find Broko's pet monster standing behind her. Part of Broko's research was developing mixtures that would allow him to control demons like Betty here, which is also the reason he was able to become the leader of the bandit camp. And as the leader, he can't let someone like Neru live after she expressed a desire to escape, so he is going to have her executed at the hands of Betty. Neru begins panicking once she finally processes what's going on, so she frantically runs away, but then Broko gives Betty the order to eat Neru, so Betty starts chasing after her. As Neru stumbles away trying to escape, she thinks back to the offer that Clem made to her, and she really wishes she had taken him up on his offer, because things might have turned out different if she had. Just then, she spots Clem holding Luna at the other end of the tunnel, and the last thought that goes through her mind is how sorry she feels for not being able to take care of Luna anymore. Normally, this is where Clem saves her just in time, but nope, Neru gets eaten by Betty and is swallowed whole, so she's gone. Luna starts crying at the sight of such a horrific act, but Clem tells him that this is just the way the world works. Magic beasts need to eat, so he can't blame it for doing what it did. If anything, it was Clem's fault for not arriving in time to save Neru. He is disappointed that he lost such a useful woman, but there's nothing he can do about it now. Clem then turns his attention to Broko, and he is confused because there's no way a proud troll from the western forest would ever submit to a short, buck-toothed man. Broko thinks Clem must be insane to insult him in this situation, and he isn't sure how Clem even got here in the first place, but it's not like it matters much. He tells Betty to eat Clem as well, but to his surprise, Betty refuses to move. He looks up at her to see what's wrong, and he is shocked to find out that Betty looks absolutely terrified. He has never seen her look this scared before, and for some reason, she refuses to go anywhere near Clem. She is so scared, in fact, that she involuntarily throws Neru up, but Neru is covered in stomach acid and missing an arm and leg, so she isn't looking good. Granted, she may be severely disfigured, but she is still alive, so Clem uses his powers to neutralize the stomach acid, and then he sets Luna down next to Neru so he can comfort her in her final moments. Clem then uses one of his shadows to carry Luna and Neru away while Broko isn't looking, and by the time he turns back to face Clem, Broko is shocked to see that the other two are gone. He thinks Clem must have done it by using some sort of magic, but Clem has no idea what magic even is. Broko thinks Clem is just feigning ignorance because magic is the only explanation for everything he has done so far. To put it simply, magic is the use of magic stone and tower ingredients to create special effects. For example, this drug in Broko's coat was made using magic stones, several herbs, and the larva of a parasitic fly. Basically, it makes anyone aside from him dumb as a rock, and after using it on Betty, she became completely subservient to him. Broko pours the drug into his fire to create a vapor, and as soon as Betty inhales it, she loses all sense of reason and attacks Clem in a blind rage. Clem's body ragdolls off the floor because he can't use much of his power in his human form, but while he is flying through the air, all he can think about is how pissed he is that Alicia didn't mention anything about magic to him. Meanwhile, Alicia is still busy cutting down the bandits, and she has already taken out 8 of them, but there are still a lot more, and the cheap sword she stole from the first guy is already broken. If she's going to kill all of them, then she's going to need a better weapon, so she starts running straight from the flooded cave. There are around 50 bandits left, but even with her immortal body, she can still get tired, so if she runs out of energy before killing them all, then she's screwed. Alicia eventually makes it to the water, but the monsters are already waiting at the surface, so if she jumps in now, she knows she's going to be eaten. That's why she heads up to the top of the scaffolding instead to trick the bandits into following her up. And once a large number have chased her up the scaffolding, she cuts the rope holding the scaffolding up and sends most of them plummeting into the water. With a large number of people in the water, the monsters go into a feeding frenzy and start devouring the bandits one after the other. However, Alicia was able to sneak past them by hiding herself in a barrel. And since she doesn't have to worry about dying from suffocation, she can just wait until she sinks to the bottom of the lake so she can find the legendary sword. Alicia eventually makes it down to the bottom of the lake, but even though she isn't going to die from suffocation, her body still needs oxygen to function, so it's really hard for her to move down here. She notices a faint red glow in the distance, so she uses all the strength she can muster to swim over to it. She eventually gets close enough to see the sword, but just as she is about to grab it, a giant eye opens up next to it, and something begins to rise. As Alicia is being swept around by the currents, she realizes that this isn't the bottom of the lake, it's the head of a giant dark beast that has been sleeping down here. And now that it's awake, it's trying to devour her. Alicia gets caught in the monster's teeth, but in all the chaos, she managed to grab a hold of the sword, so she's able to use it to break herself free. She is injured, and she barely has any strength left in her body from the lack of oxygen, but with Stream Splitter in her hands, she thinks she can get out of here in one piece. The sword's ability makes it incredibly effective underwater, so when Alicia swings the sword, it propels her forward, and she uses that force to head straight for the surface. She eventually makes it back up to the surface and takes a much-needed breath of fresh air, but the monster followed her up here, so it begins attacking everyone in sight. Alicia is able to get away for now, but she knows there's no way she can defeat an ancient dark beast like that on her own, and she is wondering what she should do. However, she then realizes something. This is a bandit camp, and she doesn't care about the bandits, so she can just leave since it's not really her problem to deal with. As Alicia is about to turn away, a few of the surviving bandits beg her to wait because they need help, but Alicia honestly can't believe they thought she'd save them after what they've done. She'd probably dance on their graves if she had the opportunity, but after that monster is done with them, there won't be anything left to bury. The giant monster finishes, devouring the last of the bandits, and thankfully, since that thing is a water beast, it has no interest in leaving that shaft, so Alicia can just ignore it now that she's a safe distance away. Most of the bandits died here, and with that thing awake now, there's no way the rest of the bandits will want to stay anywhere near here, so this camp is done for. Just then, Alicia hears Clen's voice in her head, and although he can't see what she did, he could sense that she has completed her mission, so he commends her on a job well done. However, he has a bit of a problem on his hands right now, so he needs Alicia to come help him. Alicia is shocked to learn that Klein, the all-powerful beast, is in trouble, but Clen says the circumstances are just out of his control. It's partially because he is in his human form, but he seems to have been affected by something called magic, and he's pissed at Alicia for not warning him about it sooner, so he orders her to get over here as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Vroko is running for his life because after he used his magic mist to make Betty attack Clen summoned some sort of spike from the shadows and killed Betty in a single strike. Vroko assumes that must have been some kind of magic, but he has never seen anything like it before, so he is absolutely terrified. However, as he is running away, he happens to trip over Nell's almost lifeless body, and when he sees Luna sitting next to her, a wicked idea starts brewing in his head. Back in the center of the cave, Alicia finally arrives and she's out of breath since she had to run here as fast as she could, so all this smoke really isn't helping. Clen notices the sword she is holding, so he asks her what it is. However, Alicia gets defensive and tells him he can't have it. She had to risk her life to get this sword, and it's pretty much the only reason she managed to survive, so there's no way she's giving it up now. Clen doesn't really care about the sword that much, so he decides to just let her have it. Besides, he's still got bigger issues to deal with, like this red mist. It doesn't seem to affect regular animals or humans like Alicia, but is incredibly effective against dark beasts. And even though Clen is a lot stronger than the average dark beast, his senses have still been dulled by it, so he can't smell anything and his ears are constantly ringing. Technically, he could just go back to his beast form and blow all the mist away, but this cave is rather cramped and he is worried about causing a cave-in since he isn't sure where Luna is right now. Alicia is shocked to hear that Clen left Luna alone down here. He says she should still be nearby. He sent Luna to stay by Nell's side since she is on the verge of death, which in hindsight was a really dumb move, but it made a lot of sense at the time. Now he can't smell or hear Luna anymore because of the mist, so he asks Alicia to do something about it. Alicia has no idea what Clen expects her to do here because while she is aware of the existence of magic, it is practically a foreign language to her. Some humans can use magic, and some can't. That's just the way it works. All magic requires arcanite stones to work, and while some are gifted with the ability to draw out its power and achieve varying effects, but to people like Alicia, arcanite is just a useless rock. Clen calls her useless, but since Alicia can't use magic, they're just going to have to go looking for Luna with a mist in the air. But it's entirely possible that Luna might be dead already, so he's not getting his hopes up. Alicia asks Clen what he's going to do. He finds out Luna really is dead, but Clen says it won't really change much for him. He just lose what little interest he had in humanity, and if that were to happen, Alicia knows Clen would wipe all humans off the face of the earth. She needs to make sure they save Luna to stop that from happening, so she starts looking for clues, and after looking around for a bit, she notices a trail of blood on the floor, so she asks Clen if Nell was bleeding when he last saw her. Clen confirms it, but from what he can remember, Nell's injuries were so severe that she shouldn't have been able to move at all. Meaning someone must have dragged her away, but they couldn't have gone too far. Meanwhile, Nell is being dragged across the floor by Vroko, but not because he needs her for anything, it's because she refuses to let go of him until he unhands Luna. Earlier, when Vroko found Luna, he was only interested in him because of his Hiddenite blood, but when he tried to get closer, Luna sensed the creep vibes coming off him and started crying with so much energy that it caused the arcanite lantern Vroko was holding to explode. Something like this could only mean that Luna has extraordinary magic talent, and that led Vroko to realize that Luna must be a surviving member of the Haydn royal family. He has a lot of plans for Luna now that he knows he's a member of the royal family, but he is having a hard time getting away because Nell won't let go of him. Nell is so badly injured that she's practically dead already, but she knows nothing good will come from Vroko having Luna, so he won't let him take her. Vroko is getting sick of this, so he takes out his knife and is about to cut Nell's wrists off so he can get away, but just then, Alicia shows up and she demands that he stop what he's doing. Vroko is shocked to see her here since he's sure he told the other bandits to lock her up, but by now those guys are sitting in the stomachs of the monsters in the lake. Clen notices Nell on the ground. He realizes that she must have used every last bit of her strength to stop Vroko from escaping, so he owes her one for that. Vroko realizes his chances of beating these two in a fight are slim, so instead he threatens to cut Luna's fingers off if they come any closer. This gets Alicia to stop, but Clen doesn't see what the big deal is since even if Vroko cuts Luna's fingers off, he can just use magic to heal him later. However, while that may be true, Alicia knows firsthand how painful the healing process is and she doesn't want Luna to have to go through that, so she asks Clen to let her handle it. She calls out to Vroko and tells him she's willing to make a deal in exchange for Luna's safety. She shows him the sword she is holding, and as soon as Vroko sees the crest on the handle, he recognizes it as the regalia that was lost in the lake. Alicia throws it at the wall behind Vroko and tells him he can have it as long as he releases Luna. But I'm pretty sure it would have been a better idea to just throw it at Vroko's head since she probably couldn't have taken him out like that. Anyway, Alicia tells Vroko he's going to need both arms to pull that sword out of the wall, but as long as he puts Luna down without harming him, Alicia won't stop Vroko from escaping. Vroko thinks about it for a second, but then he breaks out in laughter because a hero would never relinquish their regalia so easily under normal circumstances. Meaning Vroko must have been right about Luna being a member of the royal family. And now that he is sure of that, he tells Alicia that one regalia isn't enough for him to give up Luna. If she wants him to let Luna go, then she's going to have to give him the exact location of all 13 regalia that were lost. Alicia hesitates for a moment since it would be terrible if Vroko were to get his hands on the regalia, but Clen tells her to just tell him what he wants to know because Luna is more important than a bunch of swords. Alicia agrees, so she informs Vroko that all the swords are at the bottom of a ravine near the den of Clevitus, but it's not like he'd be able to make it there to get the swords anyway. Vroko laughs and tells her that's where she's wrong, because even though Vroko can't fight, he still has magic on his side. So he pulls out a vial of powder and dumps it all over his body. He says this powder allows him to use invisibility magic, and while normally it would only be enough to make him slightly translucent, with Luna's talent for magic, as long as he gets him to start crying, Vroko is able to turn completely invisible. Alicia and Clen can't see him anymore, so Vroko thinks he can just walk away without them noticing him, but he failed to account for the fact that Luna is still crying in his arms, so as soon as Alicia pinpoints the location from the sound, she appears in front of Vroko and slices him in half. Clen then catches Luna and dusts the invisibility powder off him, so they are pretty much done here, but Nell is still in pretty bad shape. She's still barely breathing, and it's thanks to her efforts that they were able to catch Vroko before he got away with Luna, so Alicia asks Clen if he can save her. But Clen honestly isn't sure if it's worth the trouble since he would need to use his dark ichor to heal her, but he's already using it to keep Alicia alive. Plus, Nell is missing a ton of body parts, so he'd need to rebuild a lot of her tissues and bones from scratch. It's going to be a lot of work, but Nell used everything she had to protect Luna until the very end, so Alicia pleads with Clen to save her. Clen eventually agrees, but he warns Alicia that he's going to have to briefly kill her so he can use the dark ichor to heal Nell, and Alicia says she's fine with it, but dying still really hurts. A few hours later, Clen is finally done rebuilding Nell's body. He did an amazing job because she's not ugly anymore. He even fixed all the damage she suffered at the hands of the bandits, and Nell is confused, but she thanks Clen since he obviously saved her life. However, Clen tells her if she's going to thank anyone, it should be Alicia since she's the one who convinced him to rebuild Nell's body for her. And now that Nell is alive again, Clen presents her with the same offer as before to come with him and become Luna's wet nurse, and this time Nell happily agrees. The next morning, Clen confiscates Alicia's sword and she's devastated, but he tells her that having it out would draw too much attention to them, so he's just going to store it in his shadow until it's needed. In the meantime, Nell is done packing a bunch of the bandits' stuff for them to continue their journey, and she even found some nice clothes for Luna to wear. Alicia asks her if she's alright carrying so much luggage on her own since it looks really heavy, but Nell says it actually feels light. Now that Alicia thinks about it, she recalls that Nell lost a large portion of her body when she nearly died yesterday, so Clen must have replaced those parts with something that made her stronger somehow, but she has no idea what he actually did. Nell approaches Alicia and offers to carry her sword for her since she wants to be helpful, but Alicia says she doesn't actually have her sword anymore, so Nell tells her that if she needs one, she remembers hearing something about Vroko keeping a bunch of cool swords in his desk. Alicia gets excited upon hearing this and begs Clem to at least let her have a regular sword. Clem knows Alicia is pretty much useless in battle without a sword, so he tells her she can go get one. She rushes off to rummage through Vroko's desk. With Vroko and the rest of the bandits dead, all the slaves have already run away, so this place is pretty empty now. Clem asks Nell if she's going to miss it, but she's had nothing but bad experiences in this place, so she's glad to be leaving. If anything, she wishes she could have said goodbye to Karm before they leave, and after hearing her talk about Karm like that, Clem realizes he might have made a mistake earlier. However, just before he could say anything, Clem is suddenly ambushed from above. While that's going on, Alicia breaks the door to Vroko's office down and starts searching through the desk. There she finds some money, a set of leather armor, and a decent sword, so she's satisfied and is about to return to Clem. But then Clem comes flying through the wall and crashes into the desk. He says he still isn't used to how easily this human body gets ragdolled all the time, but before he can explain what happened, Gart comes in through the hole in the wall, and at first glance, Alicia can tell that he is strong. She draws her sword to fight, but in the next moment, Gart lunges at her with a kick so powerful that the air pressure leaves a cut on her face. He's impressed that Alicia was able to react quickly enough to dodge his kick, but he doesn't think she can last long against him, so he starts hitting her with kick after kick until she loses her footing. Gart then jumps back and unleashes a torrent of wind, blowing Alicia straight through the roof. Alicia crash lands outside, and Gart is again impressed that she's still able to stand, so he offers her a deal. He's only interested in Clem, so he tells her that if she's willing to put her sword down and leave, then he won't fight her anymore. However, Alicia doesn't believe word Gart says since she thinks he must be one of the surviving bandits. She really wishes she had the Stream Splitter's sword right now, but since she doesn't, she's going to have to rely on one of the techniques she learned from Haydn. She clears all unnecessary thoughts out of her head, so now the only thing on her mind is running the fade with Gart, and her movements are much more precise now. Alicia's sudden burst of speed surprises Gart, but just as her sword is about to connect, Clem yells for her to stop. Alicia's body instinctively obeys Clem's command, but she still has nothing but murder on her mind, so Clem has to knock some sense back into her. Once Alicia is back to normal, Clem explains that this is all a huge misunderstanding, so there's no reason for them to be fighting Gart. Besides, if he hadn't stopped Alicia just now, Gart would have obliterated her body with a kick before she could slash him. Gart is a reasonable person, so he asks Clem to explain what exactly he meant when he said this is a misunderstanding. No matter how he looks at it, Nell over there smells an awful lot like a Western troll for some reason, and Gart was told that there was a troll being controlled in this camp before he came here. He has already seen the caverns below the camp, and he found the troll's corpse, but it had several body parts missing, almost like someone had intentionally removed them. Gart's hypothesis is that Clem is the leader of this camp, and he killed the troll for fun, but that's far from the truth. Clem asks Nell to take Luna and wait by the front gate since he has something to discuss with Gart, and once she's gone, he tells Alicia that Gart is really a dark beast in disguise. Alicia is shocked to hear this since she had no idea there were other dark beasts capable of transforming into humans, but Clem tells her Gart is just under the effect of a powerful illusion. As far as Clem knows, there's only one being who's capable of using such powerful illusion magic, and that's none other than the Dark Beast, Lord of the West, Zathir. And by the way, Clem doesn't get along with Zathir, so he'd like to avoid meeting him. Gart is shocked that Clem was able to figure out so much about him from such a short encounter, so he asks Clem to tell him who he really is. Clem doesn't want to reveal his true identity, so he lies and says he is a servant of the Dark Beast, Lord Clevites. Gart believes him, so he dispels the illusion magic and reveals that he is a bird monster serving under Zathir. Now that he has revealed his identity, he asks Clem to show him proof that he is also a dark beast, so Clem reveals one of his shadow tails to convince him. That's good enough for Gart, so he calls for a truce. But Alicia is freaking out because this is a lot of information to take in at once. First off, she had no idea there were other beasts capable of disguising themselves as humans and speaking the human language naturally like Clevites. If that's the case, then what was the point of the heroes going into battle against Clevites in the first place? Clem notices the unease on Alicia's face, so he tells her to stop being so paranoid because there aren't many dark beasts capable of disguising themselves as humans out there. And aside from Zathir, no one else would even bother getting involved with the humans without a good reason. With that said, Gart wants to know why Clem is willingly associating himself with a human woman. Clem explains that Alicia is a human who we turned into his servant, so now she's forced to obey his commands no matter what. He is keeping her around to act as his guide while he learns about the human world. It's the same with Nell and Luna over there, but he doesn't intend to tell Gart anything more than that. Gart understands, so he won't ask any more questions, but he wants to make it clear that if Clem interferes with his mission, then he is going to have to kill him. And Clem tells him he is welcome to try, but killing him won't be easy. Anyway, since Clen answered one of Gart's questions, he says he has something he'd like to ask now. Earlier, Gart mentioned something about Zathir considering wiping out all of humanity, but he finds that strange since from what he remembers, Zathir always enjoyed observing the humans. The Orgites in the West even worship him as a god, so why would he suddenly want to wipe out all humans? Gart agrees to explain what happened, so he tells them that 3 days ago, he noticed that a few of the dark beasts in the West had lost their children. This by itself wouldn't be that strange, but he also found a vial nearby, and that led him to believe that the humans must be involved somehow. He went to Zathir and informed her of the incident, as well as 9 other similar incidents he discovered, and Zathir agreed that humans must be behind this, but she was a bit surprised that they would do something like this when she had treated them so well. She instructed Gart to go out and investigate, and if it is true that humans are kidnapping the children of the dark beasts in the forest, she's going to wipe them all off the face of the earth. Clen thinks about it for a second, and he realizes there may be a connection between the dark beast kidnappings and the bandits. Last night, while he was interrogating Karm, she told him that all the children who are born in this camp end up being sold to a mysterious group of men because of their talent, and that's what Vroko has planned to do to Luna as well. Clen assumes the dark beast kidnappings and the human children being sold must be related somehow, and since some kind of talent was mentioned, he believes magic must be a factor in this. Once Alicia hears Clen mention magic, her expression sours, so he asks her if she knows anything about it. She tells him that magic still isn't her area of expertise, but kidnapping children for their magical talent sounds like something the wizards would do. The wizards are people who change the way wars are fought in the human kingdom over the past few years. Right now, the outcome of battles almost entirely depends on the skills of the wizards each side has because a single wizard is capable of wiping out dozens, if not hundreds of men with one spell. Granted, wizards are also susceptible to attacks from other wizards, so it's not like they are unstoppable, but they are still a formidable force. The first person to introduce wizards into warfare was General Drell, otherwise known as the Dragon Slayer, and he is the same man who killed Alicia's father when she was little, so she has held a grudge against him for years now. That's an interesting story, but Clen doesn't understand why Alicia wasted her time coming after him instead of going after the man who killed her father, since Clevides never actually did anything to the humans before they attacked. But Alicia says it was her father's last wish, so she had to put her feelings aside and go through with the mission to advance through Clevides' territory. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the human kingdom, General Drell's army is heading towards the south, and he has got 50,000 men at his disposal because he plans to capture the ruins of Haydn and claim them for himself. What's left of the Haydn army is trying to stop him, but they've got 6,000 men at most to work with, and barely any wizards available, so there's no way they could fend him off. Meagle asks if the reinforcements are going to arrive soon, but with the current state of things, it will take at least 3 days for any reinforcements to arrive, so they are on their own. However, the commander has a plan to give them a fighting chance, so he tells Meagle that if they can get into the fortress at Highgate and seal it behind them, they might be able to hold their ground against Drell's army, even with a difference in numbers. However, that would require the cooperation of the soldiers inside the fortress, and even though he already sent a letter explaining the situation to them, he hasn't gotten a response yet, so he assumes the situation in the fortress must be chaotic as well. The commander and Meagle are yet to confirm whether the rumors about Clevides destroying Haydn are true or not, but if Bolate was willing to send General Drell to conquer it, he has to assume that Haydn really has fallen. If he had to guess, he would say Drell is after the Forge of Haydn, because without it you wouldn't be able to make any magic weapons. Meagle agrees that it would be bad if the Bolates were to get their hands on it and make magic weapons for themselves. But it's much more serious than that. The Royal Forge of Haydn is one of the oldest magic items in existence, so if the magic-obsessed Bolates were to obtain it, who knows what kind of secrets they would uncover. With that kind of power, they would be able to take over the entire continent, which is why the commander says they have to be stopped at all costs. At the same time, General Drell meets with the most powerful wizard in his forces, Maynard, and Maynard informs him that he has just confirmed that Haydn was indeed destroyed by Clevides, and all the members of the royal family have been confirmed dead, all except for the 6-month-old crown prince. He is the only one left who is of royal blood, but his whereabouts are currently unknown, so Maynard can't confirm whether he's alive or dead. But in other news, he recently got word from the bandits that they found a baby, and the description matches that of the prince, so Maynard thinks it's worth investigating, and Drell gives him full authority to do whatever it takes to find that baby and bring it to him. Clan and the others have just arrived at a nearby town, so Nell makes him a cup of coffee while they wait for Alicia to gather some info. Clan has never heard of coffee before, so he asks Nell for an explanation, but she doesn't really know what it is either. It's just an expensive drink that Vroko used to have her make for him sometimes, so she grabs some of the coffee beans on their way out since she figured Clen might like it. Clem decides to give the mystery bean soup a chance, so after letting it cool, he takes a sip and it actually tastes really good. Nell is glad that he likes it, but there's something she's been meaning to ask him. She wants to know what happened to that strange man who attacked Clem back in the camp, since he just kind of disappeared at one point and it seems strange. After Gart learned about wizards and magic from Alicia, he told Clem he would be leaving to report back to his master. So they won't be seeing him for a while, but he assures Nell that even if they do run into him again, he won't attack because he's not suspicious of them anymore. Just then, Alicia comes running up the hill, and she has bad news because she just found out from the village that the situation in Haydn is an absolute mess right now. The neighboring country of Bolate broke past the border and invaded, so Haydn is fighting back, but with the king dead and the capital destroyed, there's no way they can win. The country of Eslan apparently tried to stop Bolate's advance, but it did little to slow them down in the end. Clan asks why the nation of Eslan would want to help defend Haydn when they aren't involved in the conflict, so Alicia explains that Eslan has been at war with the Bolates for ages, but right now, they are currently weaker than the Bolates, so they don't want to let them get their hands on the Haydn forge because that would make them unstoppable. Of course, even if they were to get their hands on the forge, they wouldn't be able to utilize it properly without someone of royal blood. The main problem here is that Haydn is severely outmatched since Clan killed their king, and they don't have any sorcerers to use in battle, so at this rate, it won't be long before Haydn is wiped off the map entirely. That sounds really bad, but Clen doesn't see why he should care since all he wants to do is make Luna king, so whether the Bolates take over Haydn or not, it doesn't matter to him. Alicia tells Clen, it does matter, because if Haydn becomes Bolate territory, then Luna will never be able to become king. Under Bolate rule, only Bolate-born citizens can become king, and from Luna's appearance, it is very obvious that he is a pure-blooded Haydnite, so he'd become an outcast under Bolate rule. Furthermore, pure-blooded Haydnites are extremely rare and highly sought after, as their blood holds the key to effectively refining arcana sight. And with a man like Drell leading the charge, there's no telling how far he's willing to go. Drell was the one who killed Alicia's father, but not because they were at war or anything. In fact, he and Alicia's father used to be friends, but because Alicia's father was known as one of the greatest swordsmen in the country, several years into his retirement, Drell decided to pull up and fight him to the death just to prove that he's a better swordman than him. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Drell proceeds to look Alicia in the eye after mortally wounding her father, and then he blows their house up too for no reason. Alicia was absolutely enraged, but just as she was about to grab her father's sword to attack Drell, he stopped her because Drell won't hesitate to kill her the second she picks that sword up. In his final moments, he begs Alicia not to be blinded by revenge because it will lead her down a path of war that she will never return from. Instead, he wants her to become a hero who saves people, and he promises that he will always be watching over her. Having experienced Drell's cruelty firsthand, Alicia tells Clen that the only way to ensure Luna's future is to stop the Bolates and drive them out of Haydn. Clen understands that Alicia is right, but he's still a little annoyed by the fact that he's going to have to protect a place that he had previously decided to destroy. Alicia is glad that Clen is willing to help, so she says she'll get ready to leave immediately, but Clen tells her he wants her to stay here. If he's going to be intervening directly, he can't let people know that he's only doing this because Alicia asked him to, so he will need a reason to confront Drell. And the fact that Drell has been kidnapping Dark Beast children to use for his wizard army is a pretty good reason. It will also give Clen an excuse to see just how strong these wizards truly are, so he's a little excited. He's sure Alicia must be itching to get her revenge on Drell for what he did to her father, but her father's last wish was pretty clear. He wanted her to become a hero, not someone driven by revenge. Alicia remembers the promise she made, but after everything that has happened, she can hardly call herself a hero anymore. She's just a walking corpse who is forced to serve him. While that may be true, Clen asks her what she thinks it means to be a hero. Even if Alicia doesn't think she's a hero, Clen is certain that Nell thinks of her as a hero since her life is so much better now thanks to Alicia's effort. Alicia realizes he is right, so she agrees to stay behind, and as Clen transforms, he rushes out into the forest and starts heading for the Bolate army. Meanwhile, the Bolate army has just broken through the second fortress on their way to Haydn, and Rose is starting to get really worried because if they aren't stopped soon, then it won't be long until they make it to Hitterat. He immediately races along the cliff faced with Mikkel, and tells him that there's a shallow river up ahead. So if they want to stop the Bolate army, or at least slow them down, and this is going to be their best shot. While that's going on, Alicia takes Nell and Luna into the city, and while they are walking down the street, they hear the distinct sound of someone getting the shit beat out of them. At first, Alicia is a little concerned, but then she realizes it's just one of the bandits who managed to survive her attacks, so she's not really interested in helping him. The people of this city know all about the bandits and everything they've done, so once they recognize this guy as one of them, there's no way they just let him go. Nell is still a little frightened because that guy in particular used to torment her all the time, but Alicia assures her that there's no way he'd recognize her after how much she has changed. However, the bandit does recognize Alicia, so as soon as he spots her, he tries to divert the attention of the townspeople by calling her out as the hero who released the giant sea beast in the mine shaft. The people turn around to see what he's talking about, but by then Alicia was already gone, and even if they did see her, that wouldn't change the fact that he's a bandit. Ultimately, the people end up hanging all the bandits that they found in the city, but they are really concerned by everything that's been happening lately. First, there was Clevitas' attack, then the Bolate army, and now an ancient octopus monster. Before you know it might have radioactive wasps or glacial worms, but no matter what happens, they all swear that they will protect their town from any threats. Meanwhile, Alicia and Nell are looking for a place to stay, but it's a little difficult with the entire town on high alert. Before they head into the inn, Alicia asks Nell not to refer to her as a hero because she'd prefer to keep her identity hidden for a while. As soon as Alicia opens the front door, she finds two big dudes standing on both sides, and they immediately accuse Alicia of being one of the bandits. Alicia doesn't know what to do in this situation, but fortunately, the two's mother comes over and she tells them to stop bothering the guests. Phil tries to explain that Alicia seems suspicious because she has an eye patch and is carrying a sword, but with everything that has been going on lately, carrying a sword everywhere you go is warranted. However, it's not often that you see people with a Hydemite baby, so Carrie asks Alicia for an explanation. Alicia tells her that she and Nell are guards for a very important person, and right now, their job is to protect this baby at all costs. That sounds pretty convincing to Carrie, and while she's sure that there's more to the story, she doesn't intend to pry into the business of paying customers. She asks Alicia and Nell what they need, so Alicia says she'd like a room for two, preferably with a bed that's comfortable enough for a baby. Carrie tells her that the room will cost 2 silver coins a night, so Alicia hands her enough for a 2-night stay, and Carrie tells her she can have the first room on the left. She then tells her sons to help the guests carry their luggage up to their room, so Pete goes up behind Nell and says he will take the luggage for her. Nell tells him she's perfectly fine carrying it by herself, but Pete insists, so she hands over the bags, and Pete immediately regrets offering to help because the bags are way heavier than he thought they would be. Pete and Phil eventually get the stuff up to the room, and Alicia seems happy with it, so Carrie leaves and says she can come find her downstairs if she needs anything. Once she's gone, Nell suggests they should get Luna into bed so he can rest, but unbeknownst to either of them, one of Maynard's insects has caught sight of Luna. And now that he knows exactly where the Hydemite prince is, he is sending his entire insect army after him. A little while later, Alicia is looking out the window, and she's wondering whether Klein has gotten to the battlefield yet, but then Nell gets her attention and says she should come take a look at Luna's first baby tooth. A few minutes after that, Carrie knocks on the door to let Alicia and Nell know that their food is ready, but then she realizes Luna is still asleep, so she tells Alicia she can come get it and bring it back up to her room. Alicia follows Carrie downstairs, and Carrie points to the food at the end of the table, so Alicia heads over to go get it. But on her way, she overhears all the bar patrons talking about how this whole mess is the fault of the heroes. If they hadn't gone out and challenged one of the beast lords, then Clevitas never would have destroyed Haydn, and the Bolates never would have started this war in the first place. Public opinion of heroes right now is absolutely terrible, and the people have every right to be angry because the so-called heroes did nothing but make their lives harder in the end. Alicia is about to head back up to her room, but she suddenly senses the presence of a dark beast, and in the next moment, something comes flying through the downstairs window. It lands right next to Pete, and he thinks it's just a regular ball, so he's about to pick it up, but Alicia yells that he shouldn't touch it. Unfortunately, it was already too late because the ball suddenly starts expanding and slams Pete into the ceiling, revealing that it's actually a giant centipede. Maynard then enters the inn, and he informs everyone that this is no ordinary insect. It is one that came from the dark beast forest, so it is on par with some of the more powerful dark beasts out there. One guy doesn't even bother waiting for Maynard to finish his speech because he came here tonight to have fun, not deal with the centipede monster, so he immediately jumps out the window to run away. Normally, this would have been an exceptional survival strategy, but unfortunately, Maynard already had several hundred bug monsters camping outside, so the guy ends up getting eaten anyway. Maynard set this up to make sure that no one would be able to escape the town until he is done with his mission. And just to make sure everyone is on the same page, he introduces himself as the highest mage of Droll's army. Everyone is greatly concerned because they didn't think Droll's army would attack their village like this, but Maynard tells them he's not here to take over their village. His mission is just to confirm whether the Hydemite baby here is of royal blood or not. Alicia realizes this is really bad, and if Maynard already knows that Luna is here, then she needs to hurry up and get him as far away as possible. However, she suddenly hears Nell screaming from the room, and we find out that Maynard has already sent his subordinate, the telekinesis wizard, Nay Chiffonlight, up to the room, and she's currently pinning Nell up against the wall with the bed frame. Nell doesn't understand how Nay could have gotten in through the window since this is the second floor, so she explains that she just flew up here with her axe. Her power allows her to attract and repel things that are made out of iron. So she grabbed onto the axe handle and threw it into the air to lift herself up like this. She doesn't really understand how it works, but there's apparently a huge dark beast turtle with an iron shell, and any metal weapons used to attack it end up stuck there permanently. Now that she has explained how her power works, she has to get back to work, so she takes a pill out of her bag and walks over to Luna. Nell asks her what she's doing, and Nay says she's just giving Luna some medicine that will evaluate his magic potential. If the baby can use magic, then his eyes will change color, and he will be perfectly fine. That where he could cough up blood and die, it's a 50-50. After hearing that Luna could die, Nell yells and pleads for Nay to stop it, and when Alicia hears Nell's screams, she rushes over to the room to go help, but before she could get there, Maynard uses his centipede to slam her into the wall. He's not sure who Alicia is, but he can't let her get in the way of the plan, so he's going to kill her. Meanwhile, in the room, Nell is still struggling to get herself free so she can go help Luna, but Nay tells her she's wasting her time. The force Nay can create with those bed frames is enough to stop a charging bull, so with 2 frames, Nell would need to be stronger than 2 full-grown bulls to escape, and there's no way her tiny arms could manage that. However, to Nay's surprise, Nell's tiny arms are somehow actually budging the bed frames, and with one swift push, Nell knocks Nay out cold. Maynard hears a loud crash sound coming from the room, and he's wondering what could have happened, but when he tries ordering the centipede to go investigate, he realizes something is holding it down. Alicia managed to survive the centipede's attack and tied its antenna in a knot so it is completely disoriented. And now that it can't move properly, Alicia kicks it to the ground and runs to the room to check on Nell and Luna. Maynard is impressed since no ordinary person could handle a magic beast like that, and now that he has gotten a good look at her, he realizes who Alicia is. Alicia opens the door to the bedroom ready for a fight, but surprisingly she sees Nay unconscious on the ground with Nell holding Luna beside her. She also notices the huge hole in the wall, so she asks Nell if Nay was the one who did this, but Nell tells her she was actually the one who caused that. She didn't mean to do it, but when she pushed the bed frame to get free, it ended up hitting Nay and flying through the wall. Alicia doesn't understand how something like that is even possible, but she doesn't have time to question it right now because they need to get out of here. She grabs her sword and tells Luna to stick close to her because they are going to jump out the window, and once they take the leap, Alicia uses her sword skills to slice up all the bugs in the air so they can start running, and by the time May regains consciousness, it's already too late for her to stop them. She would like to go after those too, but the bugs in the air don't discriminate, so she'd be killed the second she steps outside without Maynard's help. A little while later, Alicia and Nell manage to make it outside the city limits, and the bugs suddenly stop chasing them because Maynard only ordered them to surround the city. If they are lucky, they might be able to make it through the forest before dawn, but things are never that simple. They end up running into a second wall of insects in the forest, and there are a lot more here, so Alicia won't be able to cut her way through them like before. Nell asks what they are supposed to do, and Alicia isn't exactly sure, but for now, they need to find somewhere to hide. Back at the inn, Nay comes back downstairs and tells Maynard that the women got away. Maynard asks her if she at least managed to test the baby's magic aptitude, but she never got the chance to since Nell knocked her out with the bed frame. Maynard realizes that they severely underestimated those two, but this whole thing has allowed him to confirm a few details. First of all, the blonde woman was the hero Alicia Glenfall, and Maynard is certain of it because he was there when Drell killed her father. There's no way a hero would be traveling with an ordinary baby, so that pretty much confirms that Luna is the Hidden Knight Prince they've been looking for, and he is practically edging with anticipation of how fun it's going to be to torture a hero when he gets his hands on her. And Nay is just staring at him, wondering why she has to spend time with this lunatic. Once Maynard is done laughing maniacally, he tells Nay that they need to round up all the people and bring them out to the main square. Once all the people are outside, the town's leader asks Maynard why he brought them out here, because if he thinks a few bugs are going to be enough to make them submit, he has another thing coming. Maynard is amazed by how bold the people here are, but he wants to make a few things clear right off the bat. First, he says he and the Bolate army wouldn't even be here if the King of Haydn hadn't made that idiotic gamble and attacked Clevites. And now that the capital has been destroyed, it is possible that Clevites might come back to take over the land, so the Bolate army is kindly stepping in to protect them. It's pretty much just an excuse for them to invade Haydn, and without the king and his magic weapon, there's pretty much nothing that they can do to stop it. Besides, Maynard tells them they have a greater enemy to deal with in the meantime, because the blonde woman from earlier is one of the 13 heroes that started this whole mess, so if they want to take their frustration out on someone, they can start by hunting her down. Meanwhile, Drell's army is still on its way to conquer the fallen capital of Haydn, and they are in the middle of crossing a shallow river when Drell suddenly stops in his tracks because he can sense that someone is watching him. He tells the stalker to come out immediately because there's no use in hiding when the moon is so bright tonight. All of a sudden, Rode jumps out from the bushes nearby, and he immediately jams his spear into the water, freezing the entire thing solid and trapping the feet of all Drell's soldiers. He then orders all his men to advance, and even though Drell's army outnumbers Rhodes 10 to 1, they come prepared with ice cleats, so they are still able to move freely while even Drell's enslaved dark beasts can barely walk. Mikkel leads the soldiers into battle and tells everyone to target Drell's wizards first so they can't free themselves. Drell is familiar with the Frost Spear's abilities, but even at max output, it shouldn't have been able to freeze the entire river at once. He assumes Rode must have stationed some wizard further upstream to cool it just below freezing, so the Frost Spear could handle the rest, and he admits that he's impressed with how well thought out Rode's strategy was. Rode seems to have truly mastered the Frost Spear, and if he defeats Drell here, he can put an end to this entire war, but Drell tells him it won't be that easy. Rode charges at Drell with his spear, but Drell counters with a heavy backhand slash, sending Rode several feet back. Rode remains determined and uses his spear to launch an ice magic attack at Drell, but Drell reacts in time to dodge it and leaps off his course, leaving it frozen in place. Rode and Drell then begin fighting, and once again, Drell is impressed with Rode's capabilities, since while a regalia may grant you power, it takes real strength to draw out his full potential like this. However, he still doesn't think this will be enough to break the shackles of the world. He then unleashes his power and uses his sword to summon a dragon's claw midair. Rode is absolutely stunned because regalia aren't meant to be able to summon physical objects, but that dragon claw was definitely real because it sent Rode flying across the river. Mikkel and the rest of the soldiers notice Rode in trouble, so they all turn around to go support him. Meanwhile, Drell explains that by fusing his sword with magic, it has become something far greater than any normal sword. Just then, Drell notices some of Rode's men heading his way, so he immediately turns around and obliterates them with his dragon claw, along with all his own men as well. Rode can't believe Drell would so callously kill his own soldiers, but he believes that anyone who was weak enough to die from an attack like that doesn't deserve to see the world beyond their borders. Rode has no idea what Drell is talking about since he has been mentioning borders and shackles for a while now. So Drell explains that his goal is to destroy the legend of the heroes. That legend is what led them to challenge unbeatable opponents with methods that make victory almost impossible. Things have been the same way for thousands of years, and no one has ever thought to question it, so the tradition has remained unchanged. But that all ends here. Drell tells Rode that he's not going to kill him because he was a worthy opponent, and he should know by now that there's no way he can win this fight. Rode tries to get back to his feet, but he has no strength left in his body, so he is forced to watch as Drell continues with his conquest. However, a moment later, Clevides lands on the battlefield, and everyone looks up at him in sheer terror upon realizing that the Southern Lord of the Dark Beasts is here. Clevides can see that Drell is the one in charge here, so he tells him he has a question he'd like to ask. Someone has been kidnapping both human and dark beast children alike, and from what he has heard, it has something to do with the magic that Drell uses, so he wants to know if he is truly the one behind it. Drell asks him if a beast lord should really be coming all the way out here just to ask a question, when he probably has more important things to be doing, but Clevides tells him this is just one of his duties as a lord. If someone desecrates his land or his people, then the law of the land requires that he has to kill them with his own claws as retribution. Drell asks what gives Clevides the right to determine the law of the land, but Clevides is starting to get annoyed by the fact that Drell is talking so much, so he stabs him through the stomach. He tells Drell that this could have been avoided if he had just answered the damn question, but despite having a hole in his chest, Drell doesn't seem fazed at all. He says he already knew Clevides was going to come to kill him, and he knew there was no way he could win in a head-on battle, so he made preparations in advance. A third eye opens up on Drell's forehead as he prepares to use his ultimate spell, Dark Echra Prison. This catches Clevides off guard since he had no idea it was possible for humans to use Dark Ichor, and in the next moment, Drell's body explodes, covering Clevides in his blood. Once all is said and done, the only things left are Drell's sword and a giant sphere of what used to be Drell surrounding Clevides. However, if you thought Drell was dead, you'd be wrong because before he blew himself up, he transferred his consciousness to his sword, so he no longer has a human body and is a being made up entirely of the magic from his sword. He went through a lot of trouble to sacrifice his body for this Dark Echor Prison, and he is confident that even someone as powerful as Clevides wouldn't be able to break out of there easily. Clevitus seems to have been rendered unconscious by the prison, so he remains immobile inside, and Drell plans to leave him there until he eventually dies of starvation or old age. Rode looks on in astonishment and dread because he can't believe that Drell was really able to defeat Clevitus so quickly when the 13 heroes failed to do so. If he is capable of doing something like that, then Haydn stands no chance against his might, and Drell is more determined than ever to continue his mission, so he orders all of his remaining soldiers to get ready to move out. Meanwhile, out in the forest, Alicia and Nell are still trying to escape Maynard when Alicia suddenly senses that something is wrong. However, she has no idea what caused the strange feeling, and there's no way for her to contact Clevitus from here, so she tells Nell they need to keep moving. All the while, a group of angry townspeople are slowly hunting them down on Maynard's orders. The people from the town yell that they've lived here all their lives, so they know this forest like the back of their hands, and it'll only be a matter of time before they find Alicia. They've always hated the heroes because they never did any actual work aside from killing a rogue dark beast every once in a while, but everyone always treated them like saviors. All other tax money was used to fund the lifestyle of the heroes, and look where those same heroes got them. They know Alicia is hiding in the house, so they tell her to come out and face them already, and there's no way she can get out of this. Since they couldn't leave town, Alicia knew they would be surrounded eventually, but she didn't think the villagers would find them so soon. Luckily, it doesn't look like Maynard or his bugs have gotten here yet, so Alicia tells Nell to stay away from the windows and keep herself hidden because Luna's safety is their top priority right now. Even if they were able to run, it wouldn't make a difference unless they find somewhere to hide. Just then, Phil yells that he is done waiting for Alicia to show herself, so if she won't come out, then he's going to burn the entire building down with her in it. However, just as he is about to torch the place, Pete grabs his hand and tells him to stop because this is going too far. Phil's father, Mark, tells him that their forefathers built this water wheel centuries ago when they first settled in this village, and Mark isn't going to let Phil burn it down for nothing. Phil tries to argue that this is the only way since they need to hand Alicia over to Maynard, but Mark just smacks him over the head and says they aren't going to blindly obey some foreigner's demands just because he can control bugs. He walks up to the building and introduces himself as the one in charge of this town's defenses, and he promises that if Alicia comes down to talk to him, he won't let anyone harm her because he just has a question he wants to ask. Alicia doesn't have much of a choice, so she decides to trust Mark and heads down to talk to him. Once Alicia is outside, Mark takes one look at her and asks what happened to her regalia. Alicia tells him she doesn't have it anymore, and Mark asks if that means she sold it for money after abandoning the mission, but Alicia explains that she actually dropped it during her fight against Clevitus. She and the other heroes were completely annihilated, and she can understand why the townspeople would hate her considering the way things turned out. But to her surprise, Mark says he doesn't have any beef with her. Sure, he would have killed Alicia on the spot if she told him she sold her regalia for money and ran away like a coward, but if she really did fight Clevitus and simply lost, he can't hold that against her. After all, it was the king who decided to follow the traditions and sent the heroes on that impossible mission, so they didn't have a choice of the matter. Alicia is left in disbelief by how reasonable Mark is being, but he's not the kind of person to hold a grudge over what happened in the past. However, he does want to know what Alicia thinks they should do next. Does she think it's worth it to continue their tradition and try to go beyond the territory of the dark beasts, or should they just give up and continue to live their lives as they always have? Alicia thinks back to the day she fought Clevitus, and after she was sliced to ribbons and flung into the air, even if it was only for a moment, she could clearly see what the world beyond the dark beast territory looked like, and it was round with no end in sight. This may sound foolish coming from someone who failed so miserably, but she thinks it's important that they never stop trying to make it to the outside world, because there are things you can't learn or obtain without taking a leap of faith. She recently met someone who is both arrogant and terrifying, and even though he treats her like garbage, if she had never met him, she never would have gotten the chance to expand her worldview. And knowing that the world is much larger than anything they've ever seen before, Alicia refuses to let anyone tell her that there's no meaning in fighting to see it. Mark was really impressed by her speech, so he tells Alicia she's free to go. He's sure that a few of his men are probably still angry at her for being a hero, but he will find a way to calm them down. But she's going to have to figure out a way to get through that wall of bugs on her own. However, just as Mark was about to walk off, Maynard suddenly shows up on his giant centipede, and he immediately slashes Mark across the chest for ruining his game. You want to have fun watching the citizens as they lynch the last surviving hero, but Mark had to go and forgive her instead. Alicia wastes no time and immediately slices the centipede to bits, but Maynard managed to escape, and he has already called for the rest of his bugs to attack, so the townspeople are in serious danger. Alicia tells everyone to get into the house quickly so they don't end up as bug food, And in the meantime, she gets to work cutting down as many of them as she can. Maynard mockingly says he's impressed by Alicia's tenacity, but he wonders how long she can keep this up alone, especially since a bunch of the smaller bugs are poisonous, and she's been so busy with the big ones that she didn't notice the little guys biting her. Every insect here is dangerous, from the bees in the air to the ants on the ground and even a spider with venom so potent that it can destroy your blood. That last one really spooks Alicia, since the only thing keeping her alive right now is the black ichor that Clem used to replace her blood, so if the spider's venom destroys that, then she really won't last long. Maynard actually used to love heroes when he was little, but that all changed the day he lost his entire family to a fire, and since then, he has resented the heroes for doing nothing to help. Alicia's body is starting to shake from the poison, but the bugs keep coming after her, so she can't rest at all. But while she's in the middle of fighting for her life, she suddenly hears a familiar voice. She looks down and sees Clevidus's head poking out from her chest, and he casually tells her to hurry up and finish what she's doing here because he needs her help with something. Meanwhile, inside the house, Nell and the other townspeople are anxiously watching the fight, but they soon realize that some of the bugs are managing to get in through the cracks in the wall, so they hurriedly knock them to the ground and start stomping them out. They can't let those things get in here, especially with the future king in the room, so they all grab whatever materials they can get their hands on and begin patching up all the holes in the walls. Outside, Maynard is still taking his sweet time to mock Alicia as she struggles to fend off the bugs, and he calls her a fraud of a hero for being so weak. He then uses his magic to summon a giant scorpion that was just chilling underground for some reason, and he orders it to attack her, so Alicia is flung into the water. While she's submerged, Clevidus comes out, and by now he has figured out that she's having a hard time fighting because she was poisoned by all those insects. She asks him if the poison really works on the dark ichor, and unfortunately, it does. It's not strong enough to completely destroy it, but until the poison's effects wear off, Alicia won't be able to heal from her wounds, so her immortality is essentially gone. Up on the surface, Maynard loudly asks if Alicia thinks being underwater will keep her safe from him, because he doesn't mind sitting here and waiting until she comes up for air. However, he's not sure if her friends hiding over in that house are going to survive that long, so she might want to hurry. Over in the house, the townspeople have managed to block off all the holes in the house, but all of a sudden, they notice something fallen from the roof, and it's a giant larva. Phil immediately squishes it, but there are a lot more where they came from, and not only are they eating away at the roof, they are also devouring the entire forest as well. Back in town, once Maynard left, the people that Mark told to stay behind knocked out the Bolate soldiers, but they are starting to hear a strange sound from the nearby forest, and they aren't sure what it is. Nay tells them that it has already begun, but the men have no idea what she's talking about. In fact, they are wondering why she didn't go with Maynard in the first place when he ran off, but the answer to that is simple. She values her life, so she doesn't want to be anywhere near Maynard unless she has to. He is the master of all insects and an absolute lunatic, so when he goes into a frenzy, nothing around him survives. Back in the forest, Maynard laughs menacingly as the larvae devour the forest, and he explains that these larvae are actually really special because they only hatch once a century, and when they do, all the surrounding vegetation is completely eradicated within minutes, so by the time they are done, there will be nothing left of this forest. This has nothing to do with Alicia, by the way. Maynard just knows that the villagers rely on the wood from the forest to make a living, so he wanted to screw them over by destroying it. Additionally, once the larvae finish tearing through that building, everyone inside will become insect food, so it's two birds with one stone for him. Alicia refuses to let this go on any longer, so she jumps out of the water to stop him, but she's already too late because a bunch of the larvae have turned into cocoons, and they are going to hatch any moment now. Seconds later, hundreds of moths emerge, and they all go straight after Alicia, but when she slashes at them, their wings cover her in some strange dust, and it's messing with her vision. She can barely see what's going on now, so Maynard takes the opportunity and uses the scorpion to knock her away. She tries her best to free herself, but she has no strength left at this point as she's about to be consumed. Clevidus can see that if he doesn't do something soon, then Alicia will die, so he finally decides to help her out a little, so he pulls Stream Splitter out from his shadow. Maynard sees the sword emerge from the pile of insects, and he is starting to get worried because that looks an awful lot like a regalia. Clevidus tells Alicia that all living beings are mostly made out of water, and the same goes for insects, so he wants her to think of them as a river and get this over with quickly because he still needs her help. Alicia grabs hold of the sword, and with a single swing, she turns the insects around her to mist, but this is far from enough. She gets into her stance, and with all the power left in her body, she performs a flowing water slash, carrying the force across a large volume of water. And in this case, that water is the insects, so every last insect in the forest is eradicated within moments. Nay can see the insect juice cloud all the way from town, and she can't believe that someone was really capable of destroying all those bugs so quickly. With every last bug dead, the magic stone embedded in Maynard's chest cracks, meaning he can't use his magic anymore and is completely powerless. Alicia then points her sword at him, and he tries to act tough by saying she'll never get him to surrender, but she really doesn't care, so she just knocks him out. She was victorious, but that fight left her exhausted, so she passes out soon after. Nellie was out to check on Alicia, but by the time she gets there, she sees Clan carrying her and she's a bit confused because she had no idea Clan had returned from his mission. Clan tells Alicia she wasted way too much time dealing with that weakling, and that they need to get ready to leave immediately because the situation has changed. This version of Clan is just a clone he made from the dark ichor in Alicia's body after he got himself sealed away in a blood bubble, and he needs her help to break free. Alicia asks him if he at least managed to defeat Drell, but about that, Clem is pretty sure that Drell has the power of one of the Dark Lord beasts on his side, so he's not going to be easy to beat. Over in what's left of the Kingdom of Haydn, evacuation efforts are in progress and roughly 80% of the survivors have been relocated to the underground bunker. However, Queen Tala refuses to leave, at least not until she has found her son. One of the elders tries to convince her to leave by reminding her that right now she's the only person left who is suitable to rule this kingdom. However, Tala insists that she can't run away, because what kind of mother would she be if she were to abandon her son? The elder understands how she must feel, but she wonders how Tala is so certain that her son is alive when there has been no sign of him since the attack. Tala explains that she knows her son is alive because the Forge of Haydn is still glowing its usual bright red. Under normal circumstances, with the king dead, the forge will become dormant until someone worthy of using it appears, but the fact that it's still active means a member of the royal bloodline is still alive. And the only other person with the king's blood is Tala's son, so she says their top priority should be finding him and ensuring his safety until he is old enough to use the forge. As long as they can do that, then the Kingdom of Haydn will live on. The plan of action is clear, but Tala is a little frustrated because they wouldn't have had this problem if she had been able to flee the kingdom with her son as planned. The elder asks what she means, so she explains that before Clevet's attack, she had a premonition that this would happen. She knew the heroes would be too weak to defeat the Dark Beasts and Clevetes would destroy the capital in retaliation, but she didn't know when exactly it would happen, so she missed her chance to escape. Just then, the Queen's messenger, Favio, returns and he says he has important news to report. He tells Tala that Drell's army of 50,000 engaged in battle with the army of Estlin along the Morel River. The Estlin army fought bravely, but they were ultimately helpless against Drell's powerful magic. However, just as the battle ended, Clevetes appeared out of nowhere and instantly wiped out roughly half of Drell's army. But that's not even the craziest part. Moments later, Drell somehow created a strange red sphere which managed to trap Clevetes, and this revelation puts Tala on edge, because how is she supposed to deal with someone that could defeat a Dark Beast Lord? Now, Drell and his remaining army of around 20,000 men are on their way here, and none of them know what to do. Tala refuses to accept this since it goes against everything their traditions talk about. Only heroes should be able to even challenge Dark Beast Lords, but Favio points out that Drell is technically a former hero, and he still possesses his regalia, so he does meet the requirements of the prophecy. Even so, Tala refuses to believe that a man like Drell who would lead an army to invade another nation could be the hero of prophecy, so she announces that she will go out and shatter his regalia because he does not deserve to wield it. Favio asks her if it is even possible to shatter a regalia, and Tala explains that as long as she is wielding the sacred hammer of Haydn, she can do it since it is the only thing capable of forging or breaking regalia. The elder tries to dissuade Tala from doing anything rash, reminding her that only the king of Haydn is allowed to wield the hammer. But with the king dead, until her son takes the throne, she says she's going to serve as the king, and that gives her every right to wield that hammer. No one can argue with that, so they all help her don her armor, and Favio runs off to fetch the hammer. Tala thanks him for his help and takes the hammer from its case, and with its powers, she plans to confront Drell and his army. Back in the village, Pete drags Nay over to Alicia just like she asked him to, and he still can't get over how cool she looked when she destroyed all those bugs with one swing. He says he will be her personal errand boy for as long as she's here, and Alicia is a little surprised by how nice Pete is being to her, but since he offered, she asks him if he could bring Nell here as well. Pete immediately runs off to do as Alicia asked, and Clem congratulates her because it looks like she officially has her first servant. Alicia tells him to stop teasing her because it's not like she wants a servant. What she really wants right now is to get a new set of clothes because she's absolutely covered in bug juice right now. Just then, Nay speaks up and asks why they brought her here, because her knees are starting to hurt and she just wants to go home. Alicia thinks it's a bit strange that Pete was able to capture Nay so easily because Nell mentioned that Nay could control magnetism. However, Pete didn't come after her with any weapons, so there was nothing for Nay to control, and against that much muscle, she was totally powerless. Anyway, Alicia says she has a few questions she wants to ask. So she tells May to spill everything she knows about Drell and his involvement with the Dark Beast Lords. May has no idea what Alicia is talking about, so she rephrases the question and asks if May has ever seen Drell's dark ichor. She explains that it's basically blood that moves on its own, but Nay seems genuinely confused and says she has never seen anything like that, and frankly, it sounds disgusting to look at. Alicia can tell that Nay isn't lying about this, but Clem is sure that what Drell used was dark ichor and only Dark Beast Lords are capable of producing it. Drell on his own wouldn't be a threat, but if there's a Dark Beast Lord supporting him, then they need to find out what's going on here. Since Clevides is right here, the only lords left who could be supporting Drell are Zathir of the West, Rathwell of the West, and Vorden of the North, and if one of them had truly decided to bare their fangs at Clevides by using Drell, then he is going to make sure they pay the price. Speaking of Drell, Alicia asks Clen if it was really alright for him to leave his body behind and come here in his small form, but Clen says that wasn't his main body. And it's better for him if whoever is helping Drell thinks Clevides is trapped, since it would make it easier for him to corner his foe. Neg has been trying to get their attention for a while now, so she speaks up and asks them if they are done because she would like to go now. It's true that she is powerless without metal to work with, but she still has the metal in her gauntlets with her. She can't control it while it's touching her skin, but because her arms are so thin, with a little effort, she's able to slip her hand free. She then tosses the gauntlets into the air and hooks her handbag over them so she can fly away. Clen and Alicia really weren't expecting that, so they just watch as Nay floats away. While she's flying, Nay spots Nell and Luna in a cart on the way over to Alicia and Clen, and she notices that the cart has metal in its wheels, so she decides to take advantage of the opportunity. Drell is going to scold her if she comes back empty-handed, so she lands on top of the carriage and says she'll be taking them with her to Hitterat. She uses her gauntlets to knock the brothers out and then lifts the carriage into the air to kidnap Nell and Luna. However, just when she thought she had gotten away with it, she realizes that Clen is somehow sitting right next to her, and he tells her to pick up the pace because they don't have much time to waste. Alicia then holds her sword to Nay's neck and explains that the whole reason this cart was prepared was because they wanted to force Nay to give them a ride to Hitterat, so this works out great for them. Since Alicia's sword is made of pure hide metal, Nay won't be able to control it, so she does the smart thing and surrenders, agreeing to peacefully take the group to Hitterat. Down on the ground, the brothers are relieved when they realize that Clem and Alicia made it onto the carriage safely, so they start waving goodbye and yell that Alicia is always welcome to come back. The rest of the people in town say the same thing as they fly overhead, and Alicia is glad that she was able to make a positive impact on their lives because it makes her feel like a real hero. Clan teases her again for having such a smug expression on her face, but Alicia thinks she earned at least this much since she did manage to save the town, but Clen reminds her that she only managed it thanks to his help. Nell isn't sure what exactly happened, but she does think Alicia was extremely heroic, and it came as a real shock when she found out that Luna is the Prince of Haydn. She asks if it's really alright for her to be holding him so casually since someone like her normally isn't allowed to touch a royal, but Clen says that's a dumb rule. Nell is in a special position and has been invaluable in keeping Luna alive. She is also several times stronger than any regular human now, so if anyone ever tries telling her she's worthless, she should just crush them. Alicia feels the need to interject and clarify that Nell can't go around crushing people like that, but Clen says that's the way he has always dealt with his haters, so he doesn't see a problem with it. Soon the group arrives at a mountain range, and on the other side is the capital city of Hitterat, so Clen asks Alicia if she's ready to fight. He can't let anyone know that he's here, so he won't be able to assist her, and he also can't let Drell find out about the dark ichor in her body, so her healing will be limited. Regardless, Alicia says she is ready to take him on and get revenge for her father, so May flies the cart over the mountain range, and as soon as Hitterat is in view, it becomes clear that the city is already under attack. Drell must be nearby somewhere, so Alicia looks around and spots him standing on top of one of the castle walls. She doesn't want to waste any time, so she grabs Nay's arm and forces her to turn the carriage straight towards Drell. Meanwhile, on the castle walls, Princess Tala and the magic sword-wielding knights all gather to face off against Drell. Tala tells the knights that their swords are almost as strong as Drell's regalia, so if anyone is going to be able to handle him, it's them. However, you can already tell that these guys are gonna end up on a t-shirt within the next few minutes. They'd all charge at Drell and try to surround him, but even as they begin their attack, Drell just calmly stands there and calls them irritating. At this point, the knights knew without a doubt that they were cooked, but they are loyal to their kingdom, so they all ran into certain death anyway in hopes of distracting Drell long enough for the archer squad to get a good shot in. But even with the clearest line of sight possible, the archers fumble the shot, and Drell turns himself into a sword to evade. Tala and the other knights are trying to figure out if they are going crazy or if Drell really just turned himself into a sword mid-fight and have no idea what that transformation does, so the shield bearers step out into formation to block it. However, they are all immediately blown away, and Drell ends up grabbing Tala by the throat. He commends her efforts to protect Haydn, but he tells her that she can never become king, and Tala is well aware of that. She has no royal blood flowing through her veins, and only the one with the strongest royal blood can claim the throne. If all the king's successors die, then the succession right naturally passes to the closest relative, but Drell will be putting a stop to that tradition today. Tala can't guarantee that she'll survive, but she's confident that one strike from the hammer should be enough to shatter Drell's regalia, but she needs a distraction to buy her enough time. Just then, Alicia comes crashing down from the flying carriage, and it confuses the hell out of Tala, but that's as good a distraction as she's going to get, so she takes the opportunity and strikes at Drell's sword. While that's going on, Clem and Nell are watching from afar, and Nell wonders if Alicia is going to be okay fighting Drell on her own. Clem tells her it doesn't really matter if Alicia wins or loses because all he wanted was for her to keep Drell busy. Drell and whoever is supporting him are after the Forge of Haydn, so he wants to get to it first, and that's why he brought Luna along, because only someone of royal blood can undo the seal. Clem already knows where the forge is, so he leads Nell to one of the castle walls and tells her the forge is on the other side. He could probably break through the wall easily, but he's trying to keep a low profile here, so he tells Nell to do it instead. Nell pauses and asks if he's sure if he wants her to do it, because the wall seems pretty solid, but Clem says that when he healed her, he concentrated the power of a troll into her tiny arms, so her strength should be several times greater than even the strongest troll. Nell decides to go with it and gives the wall a little push, but to her surprise, she sends the block flying with way more force than she anticipated. It flies all the way to the other side of the wall, crashing down right where the guards who were meant to protect the forge are stationed. For some reason, she just felt her KD ratio rise a little, but Clem tells her she's imagining things and asks that she hurry up because they don't have much time. Meanwhile, by the forge's entrance, Favio and a few of the guards manage to survive Nell's unintentional attack, but before they could figure out what hit them, Clem uses his powers to drive them into the shadows, and once he arrives at the forge entrance, he carefully places Luna's hand on the seal to unlock it. A little while later, Gart comes flying down to inspect the bubbles that Clevitus's body is trapped in. He is fairly certain that Clevitus should have been able to break out of something like this, so he doesn't understand why he's still in there. Gart gives the bubble a kick to try and break it, but that thing is really solid, so he knows he doesn't have what it takes to break apart. Just then, Rode turns around the corner and introduces himself. He saw Gart fly down from the sky, and he assumes that must be his magic ability, so he wants to ask for a favor. He says he needs Gart to fly him over to the capital of Haydn, because by now, Drell and his army have surely begun their attack, and he needs to stop them. Gart was initially going to ignore Rode, but he was watching the fight here from a distance, and he definitely remembers Rode getting his ass beat by Drell, so he wonders why Rode would want a rematch now. Rode is aware that he probably doesn't stand a chance, but someone needs to stop Drell before he gets his hands on the Forge of Haydn, because if he gains access to that treasure and wields it with his magic, a catastrophic calamity is going to befall the land. Hearing the word magic reminds Gart of what Zathir had said before he went out on this mission. If this calamity is truly about to take place, then perhaps he should look into it by using Rode as a cover story. Gart turns to Rode and says he will help get to Hitterat, but only on two conditions. First, once they get there, Rode has to help Gart with his mission for a while, and second, Rode isn't allowed to ask any questions about who Gart is. Rode asks what will happen if he breaks these conditions, so Gart tells him he will kill him. Rode says he can't do anything that would betray his homeland, but aside from that, he agrees with Gart's terms. Gart then reveals his wings and tells Rode to grab on if he doesn't want to be left behind, and so Rode holds onto Gart's ankle, and the two start heading for Hitterat. Meanwhile, in the capital, Clem is still trying to open the forge seal with Luna's help, but doesn't seem to be working. He also doesn't think breaking in is a good idea, so he decides to try getting in from above. He tells Nell she'll have to watch Luna by herself for a bit, and then proceeds to jump up to the top of the furnace chimney. The heat coming out of the furnace is incredible, so much so that he's sure any regular dark beast would be incinerated if they tried to get in through here. But he's no ordinary dark beast, he's built different, so he leaps in without a second thought. Meanwhile, outside, Nell is approached by a strange man, and when she turns around to see who it is, she is absolutely horrified. As for Clem, halfway down the chimney, he realized he really wasn't built to handle this much heat, so he hid in the shadow of one of the bricks he managed to knock loose instead. He is greatly impressed by the power that the forge possesses even in its dormant form, and he'd love to take a look inside, but he's almost certain that he'd burn to a crisp the second he tried. Just then, Clem turns around and realizes that the forge doors are somehow open, but even more concerning is the fact that Nell is unconscious out front and Luna is nowhere to be found. A moment later, the mysterious man from before walks out from a corner of the room holding Luna, and he turns out to be the King of Haydn. Though judging by the state of his body, he should definitely be dead. Meanwhile, Alicia is still locked in battle against Drell, but it's not going well. Drell mocks Alicia and tells her she's nowhere near as strong as her father was, and as much as she hates to admit it, Drell is right because she's barely able to keep up with him. She ends up getting knocked back into a group of Drell's soldiers, but these guys aren't worth her time, so she starts looking around to see where Drell went. She spots him heading for the castle, so she wastes no time and jumps back in to catch up to him. As soon as Drell lands on the wall, the queen and her remaining soldiers immediately fire more arrows at him, but it's just a minor inconvenience to him at this point, so he effortlessly slices all the arrows in half. The arrows may not have done much damage to Drell, but they did buy enough time for Alice to catch up, so she hits Drell with a rising sword slash. Unfortunately, it turns out that Drell was the one who originally developed that technique, so he is easily able to block it and hits Alicia with something even stronger, the Dragonfly Scythe Slash. This sends hundreds of slashes straight at Alicia, but to Drell's surprise, she manages to come out of it with all her limbs still attached, so he praises her and says she has talent for this, as expected of the daughter of the Sword Master. Alicia doesn't want to hear all this empty praise from Drell, so she raises her sword and demands to know what happened between Drell and her father, and why Drell killed him. Drell says her father, Margot, was a friend who trained with him in the same sword school, and also competed against him for the title of hero. Alicia is shocked to hear this because this is the first time she's hearing of this, and Drell is just as surprised that she has never heard the story, so he puts his sword away and says he will tell her all about how he became known as Drell the Dragon Slayer and how her father gave up on being a hero. 25 years ago, Drell and Margot were facing each other in a tournament to determine the wielder of the first regalia that the King of Haydn had forged at the time. Drell and Margot were still really good friends back then, so as the tournament began, they both agreed to give it their all. By the end of the duel, Margot emerged victorious, and even though Drell was greatly disappointed that he lost the opportunity to become a hero, he was still a good sport about it and congratulated Margot on his victory. Once he was declared the champion, he was officially bestowed the title of Sword Master as well as the regalia. He was told that from the moment he accepts the sword, he must fulfill the duties of a hero, fight dark beasts, and protect humanity. Margot agrees to the terms, so the king handed him the regalia, and as soon as he drew it from its sheath, he could feel the power surging through his body. It may be strong, but the king told Margot that the regalia was still incomplete, so he would need to finish it on his own. Margot asked what that's supposed to mean, so the king explained that all regalia have souls, and the first thing that is killed with that blade is the soul that will be trapped within it, so Margot should choose his first target wisely. A little while later, Margot and Drell met in a nearby tavern to discuss their plans for the future. Margot said he was planning to put together an expedition force for his first mission, so they can handle all the weaker threats, because it'd be bad if he ended up getting a dark beast bug as his first kill. Speaking of his first kill, he tells Drell he's thinking about going after one of the northern dragons, but as soon as Drell heard that, he got up in a panic and warned Margot not to do anything crazy. He understands that Margot wants a powerful darkness as the soul for his regalia, but the northern dragons are the servants of the dark beast Lord Vorden, and injuring him at this point in time would be a guaranteed death sentence. On top of that, the dragon all live in the snowy mountains, so Margot would never be able to make it through terrain like that with an incomplete regalia. However, he says this is the only choice he has if he plans to take on a dark beast Lord eventually. Drell was already skeptical of Margot's chances of winning against a regular dragon, but it's absolute madness to even think about going up against a dark beast lord. The legends all talk about heroes eventually being able to defeat the dark beast lords, but Drell honestly never believed them. However, he knew firsthand that Margot was the strongest swordsman around, so if anyone was going to defeat the dark beast lord, it would be him. Margot got up and told Drell they needed to start preparing for the expedition, but even though Margot was fully confident that they'd be able to take down a dragon, the situation turned out a lot worse than he anticipated. The conditions of the snowy mountain were incredibly harsh, and while they were able to spot a dragon fairly quickly, the dragon also spotted them, so it spun the block and unloaded a clip of flammable stomach acid on them. That single attack took out the entire expedition team, so Drell and Margot are the only ones left. Drell tries telling Margot they should retreat since their chances of beating that thing on their own are not looking good, but unfortunately, retreat isn't really an option here since it'd probably just chase them down if they ran. Their only choice is to charge in and kill it before it kills them, but that's a lot easier said than done, especially when the dragon is using sky strats to stay out of their attack range. They need to think of something quickly, so Margot comes up with an idea and tells Drell to hit him with the rising dragon technique. It's a risky play, but it's the only way for Margot to get anywhere near the dragon. So Drell goes along with it and runs straight at Margot before hitting him with the rising dragon slash. It works just as intended, so Margot is launched up into the air, and once he's above the dragon, he slashes down to cut his wings to pieces. The dragon comes crashing to the ground shortly after, and it's finally Margot's time to shine. Drell can do nothing but watch from the sidelines in awe as he witnesses the extraordinary performance Margot is putting on against that thing. Even without wings, a dragon is still ferocious, but Margot is even more so. With each and every swing, his strikes grew sharper and more precise, so Drell was starting to believe that he might be able to slay it after all. However, that's when tragedy struck. Margot was preparing to land the final blow on the dragon, and it looked like it would be a clear-cut victory, but mid-stride, one of his feet got caught on a rock for a fraction of a second, and that small opening was all the dragon needed. It immediately swung its claws and tore Margot's foot clean off, along with any hope he had of winning the fight or becoming a hero. In that moment, Margot understood that, yep, this is the end of the road for me, so at the last second, he threw his sword over to Drell and yelled for him to finish this moments before he was stomped silent by the dragon. Drell barely had any time to process what had just happened, but he knew what he needed to do, so he grabbed the regalia and charged straight for the weakened dragon. Thanks to all the damage Margot had already done, Drell was easily able to slash the dragon's head off, and he could hardly believe what he just did. He turned around to check on Margot and tell him that they actually defeated the dragon, but moments later, the regalia began to absorb the soul of the dragon. Drell could feel the immense power that was flowing into the sword, and it made him feel stronger than ever before, but just as the sword had finished absorbing the soul, Drell felt a terrifying presence behind him. All the commotion had gotten the attention of Dark Beast Lord Vorden, and the next thing Drell knew, he woke up in a puddle of his own blood, but somehow his body was still perfectly fine. Following that, Drell managed to carry Margot and one other survivor back to the city, and from there, Margot retired as a hero and lived out the rest of his life until Drell eventually killed him. But the entire time, even after Drell earned the title of Dragon Slayer and became a hero, his doubts about the hero legend never went away. He believes the legends are full of lies, and the most important information regarding them is being hidden by the royal family. The Queen has no idea what Drell is talking about, but there's nothing she could say to change his mind at this point. Alicia asks Drell if he thinks magic is what was hidden from the legends, and Drell confirms it. He says that's what the voices in his head have been telling him ever since the day he encountered Vorden, and he knows exactly what he needs to do now. Drell uses necromancy magic to summon an undead dragon skeleton, and he uses that to knock Alicia off the wall before flying away on its back so he can claim the forge. Meanwhile, on the ground, Alicia managed to survive the fall, but her arm and leg are messed up pretty badly, so she uses the Dark Ichor to fix them up, and it still hurts like hell. She tries contacting Clem through their mental link to warn him that Drell is on his way over to the forge, but Clem tells her to be quiet because something interesting is happening right in front of him. The King of Hidden is about to throw his grandson into the forge for some reason. Alicia asks Clem what he means, but before she can get a response, the Queen walks up to her. She tells Alicia that she's glad to see her again since she thought she had died at the hands of Clevitas during the mission. She asks if any of the other heroes managed to survive as well, but Alicia informs her that sadly she's the only one who managed to make it back alive. The Queen is disappointed to hear that, but even so, it's still a huge relief to have Alicia here. In Hitterit's current condition, the best they can do is hold back Drell's forces, but none of their soldiers are capable of standing up to Drell and his powerful magic. Their only hope right now is Alicia and her regalia, so the Queen asks her if she's willing to stop Drell for the sake of the kingdom. Alicia promises to do her best to stop him, but that aside, there's something important that she needs to discuss. She tells Tala that her son is still alive and he's here in Hidden right now. Tala freezes in shock at Alicia's words because so far, no one has had any information regarding her son's whereabouts, but Alicia is certain that Luna must be Tala's son since he clearly has royal blood. The Queen is overjoyed by the revelation that her son is alive, so she begs Alicia to take her to him. However, Alicia tells the Queen that it's too dangerous for her to come since there's no telling how dangerous the situation over there might be. She promises to bring Luna back with her so Tala can see him, but that's not good enough for her. She may be the Queen, but she's also Luna's mother, and if he's potentially in danger, then she can't just sit idly by and wait. Alicia understands how Tala feels, so she agrees to bring her along, but at the same time, in the forge, the beheaded body of the king is preparing to make a sacrifice to the forge. Clem is just watching for now because he wants to see where this goes, but when it becomes clear that he intends to throw Luna in, Clem grabs his arm to stop him. He asks the king if this is really how a grandparent is supposed to be treating their grandson, But the king is well aware of just how messed up this really is. In fact, he really doesn't want to do it, but he isn't in control of his body right now. His actions are being determined by the will of the Forge, and throwing Luna in is part of the process of making him the next king. For generations, all who are set to become king are thrown into the Forge and burnt to ash, and moments later, the Forge resurrects them with a new body, making them incapable of disobeying its will. Normally, after the naming ceremony, the name of the child who will become king is carved into the Forge, and after that, the Forge inevitably compels the child to jump in. However, since Clevidus' attack happened before Luna's name was carved into the Forge hasn't been able to compel him to leap in. Thus it did the next best thing and temporarily resurrected the deceased body of the king to force him to throw Luna inside. Clen asks if all that means the king was once forced to jump into the Forge and remain as the Forge's puppet, and that's exactly right. In fact, the same thing was set to happen to Luna's father, the king's son, but he was so terrified of being enslaved by the Forge that he took the hero nice route and stylishly jumped off the castle walls. The king thinks what his son did was a foolish decision because ending his own life only meant the next in line would be chosen, so the tradition continues and the king drops Luna into the Forge, burning him to ash in an instant. Meanwhile, outside, Drell flies overhead with his dragon, and the voices in his head must be really convincing, because he now believes that the only way to save the world is to destroy it by drawing out whatever is inside the Forge. At the same time, on the ground, Alicia tells Tala to climb onto her back so she can carry her to the Forge as fast as possible. As they are moving, Tala explains that since she was never a true ruler, there are a lot of things that were kept secret from her, and when her husband was set to become king, he took his own life. But he did tell her one thing before he did what he did. He said that all the true heroes are gone, and there's no way they can defeat the Dark Beast Lords with the heroes of today. Tala didn't really understand what he meant at the time, but he might have been onto something. Haydn has over 1,000 years of history, yet there are no records of anyone ever even coming close to defeating a Dark Beast Lord. In fact, there's no proof that defeating the Dark Beast Lords will even allow them to explore the world, so Tala is starting to wonder who was responsible for creating the legend in the first place. Of course, she tried to ask her husband for answers, but he seemed unable to talk about it for some reason and just gave her a sad smile. Tala believes the kings of Haydn have been hiding the truth from everyone for generations, and if that's the case, then that means the former king sent Alicia and the other heroes out knowing fully well that they wouldn't be strong enough to win, and Tala thinks that was just plain irresponsible. However, Alicia says she probably would have gone on that mission regardless of their low chance of survival, because to her, it was more than just battling a Dark Beast Lord. It was about facing an impossible challenge with the optimism of a hero, and that's the way she wants to continue living her life until she puts an end to the vicious cycle at play. However, Drell, on the other hand, is one who succumbed to despair and abandoned the way of the hero to destroy everything. Of course, Alicia wants to take revenge on him for what he did to her father, but more than that, she needs to stop him to prove that she's right about wanting to live as a hero. Tala tells Alicia that she's a great hero, but Alicia actually thinks of herself as weak. She isn't as strong as Drell and nowhere near as powerful as any of the Dark Beasts, but that doesn't mean she's going to quit. Of course, she did initially plan to give up on being a hero, but then she met someone who wouldn't let her. And right now that person has a huge smile on his face because he finds the situation he is in hilarious. The king of Haydn has just dropped Luna into the furnace, or at least that's what he thought he was doing, but the Luna that was burnt to ash turned out to be a shadow clone Clen had made, and the real Luna is still safely resting in Clen's arms. He mockingly asks the king what's going to happen now, because he has clearly failed the mission the Forge forced on him. The king doesn't say a word and just stares at Clen as his body begins to lean backwards, and he falls into the Forge. As he watches the king's body turn to ash, Clen is a little surprised by the turn of events, but he is sure that this won't be the end of things, so he yells for the master of the Forge to get out here and face him already. Moments later, large flames erupt from the Forge, and the mountainside is destroyed as a result of the explosion. Drell sees this happen, and the voice in his head tells him he needs to act fast because there's no time to waste. Alicia and Tala see the Forge explode and Drell heading straight for it, so Tala is incredibly worried about Luna's safety. But Alicia yells for her to stay back because the situation has gotten too dangerous to let the queen get involved now. She's fairly certain that Clen wouldn't allow Luna to die from something like this, but it would be a problem if Drell manages to get to them first. However, just as he is about to enter the Forge, Gart flies overhead and drops Rode off just as he promised. Rode yells out Drell's name and swears that he will stop him, so he activates his spear and forms a massive ice spike on the tip. The ice javelin pierces straight through Drell's dragon, and Gart finds the whole situation interesting, so he decides to stay and observe everything from a distance. Once they hit the ground, a huge dust cloud is kicked up, and Road wonders if he really managed to defeat Drell with that attack. But as the dust settles, he discovers that Drell managed to block the strike, so he is flung back and Drell is about to finish him off, but all of a sudden, Alicia steps in and knocks Drell's swords away. Drell is getting annoyed by the constant interference, so he plans to end this as soon as possible and prepares to face the two. Alicia and Road regroup, and since this is their first time meeting, Road asks Alicia if she happens to be a hero. Alicia confirms this, and they both introduce themselves to one another, but they don't have much time to chat because they still have to deal with Drell. Road asks if it's safe for him to assume that Alicia will fight alongside him, and she says she was about to ask the same thing because if either of them were to face Drell alone, there's no way they'd win. Drell finds it amusing that the two think teaming up will be enough to give them an edge over him, but he tells them it won't matter because their strength is hindered by their human bodies, but he has no such limitations. In an instant, Drell appears behind the two and unleashes a slash so powerful that it sends Alicia and Road flying. Drell then hits them again, sending both into the air, and while they are disoriented, he flies up and stabs Alicia in the chest. Road tries to sneak up on him while he's distracted, but Drell sees it coming and catches him by the wrist before sending him and Alicia back to the ground. Drell spends a moment looking down on them from the sky just to be disrespectful, and then he flies down to put an end to this. The two need to come up with a plan quickly, so Alicia tells Road to use his ice javelin move one more time. Road doesn't understand why she'd ask for that, but he trusts Alicia's judgment, so he points his spear to the sky and summons an ice javelin. Just as expected, Drell is able to easily dodge it, and he's frankly insulted that Road would attempt such an obvious attack, but when he looks back to the ground, he realizes that Alicia isn't there anymore. She had jumped onto the ice javelin to get behind Drell and to make sure he wouldn't be able to escape. Road uses the last of his power to freeze Drell's feet in place, providing the perfect opportunity for Alicia to drop down and slash him clean in half. However, Drell is barely inconvenienced by his body being bisected because his true form now lies within his sword. The sword then spins around and flies straight towards Alicia before cutting her arm off and sending her crashing to the ground. Road runs in to catch her, and above him, he watches as Drell's body is reformed from his dark ichor. Drell tells them that their efforts are commendable, but all their hard work is worthless because people like them can never become true heroes. The fact that humans need to implant magic stones in order to use magic is evidence of this, so he tells Road and Alicia that all the humanoids on this continent are inferior to the true humans who ruled the entire world centuries ago. Current humans and dark beasts are nothing but pawns in the game of the true humans, and the game will continue forever unless someone puts a stop to it. That is exactly why Drell wants to burn every trace of this stupid hero legend to ash, so they can start over, and until then he will commit as many atrocities as necessary. Clem heard Drell's entire speech through his connection with Alicia, and he finally understands what Drell, and by extension, his master Vorden, are after. Personally, Clem has never met these true humans Drell mentioned, so he assumes they must have disappeared before he became a Dark Beast Lord. And that also means this book must be one of the last remnants of the true humans legend. The second the book appeared, the entire forge vanished, so Clem realizes it was a mere book that had been driving the kings of Haydn to kill themselves. Also, it can resurrect them as puppets for its own goal. He wonders if everything that has happened so far was because of this book's control over the royal family of Haydn, including Alicia and the other heroes attacking the southern beast forest, the human kingdom going to war, and even Clem wanting to destroy all humans. All of it was caused by this book manipulating events to bring him to this point. Clem laughs at the absurdity of this situation and at himself for being manipulated so easily, even though he's a Dark Beast Lord. He didn't inherit the memories of the previous lord, so there's a lot he doesn't know, but he can only assume his position was created to fight against the elusive true humans that Drell mentioned. And if that's the case, then everything he thought he knew about this world was wrong. In fact, now that he thinks about it, he wonders why he was even bothering himself with this baby in the first place. He sets Luna down and begins walking away because he no longer has any interest in destroying mankind or even associating with them at this point. He lets the Book of Tola fall to the ground and is about to leave, but Alicia could hear Clem's entire speech through their mental link, and she calls it utter BS. Clem is surprised to hear Alicia's voice again since he honestly didn't think she would survive this long against Drell. Her current situation actually isn't looking great, but that's not the point right now. She asks Clem if he really thinks it's alright to walk away after everything he has done, but he says he finally knows what Drell and Vorden are after, and frankly, he has no reason to try to stop them. If they want to go around wiping all traces of the heroes out of this world, then that's none of Clem's business, and whatever happens to the fragile humans as a result is none of his concern. He tells Alicia that if she wants to survive, she should give up on her identity as a hero and just let things play out. But she was never concerned about her own survival. She asks Clen if he can honestly say the world is meaningless after looking into Luna's eyes. She doesn't care about true humanity, true heroes, or whatever else the prophecy mentions because none of it matters. Those true humans that the legend talks about, she has no idea what they were, if they aren't here anymore, and if they couldn't survive in this world, then what gives them the right to call themselves a superior species? Clen realizes that Alicia has a point, so he turns around to take a look at Luna and sees him bawling his eyes out while trying to stand. He stumbles the first time, but after a few attempts, Luna manages to take his first step, and seeing this reminds Clen that humanity still has room to learn and grow from their past mistakes, so there might still be hope for a better future. Meanwhile, outside, Drell asks Alicia to think about what she's doing because she should know there's no way she can defeat him without a regalia. But even so, Alicia continues to charge towards him. Drell says this is the end of the road and he's about to slash her to bits, but at the last second, he gets knocked away by a block thrown by Nell, and this buys enough time to give Alicia a chance to reach her regalia. Once Drell breaks past the block, he starts flying straight towards her, but Alicia slides underneath him. And once she's close enough to her regalia, she begins using her dark ichor to pull her severed hand towards her. Drell's confidence is shaken for a brief moment once he realizes that Alicia also has dark ichor coursing through her veins, and that hesitation provided the perfect opportunity for her to hit Drell with a rising dragon strike. Everyone on the ground looks up in awe at the move Alicia just pulled off, but then Rode realizes that Drell actually managed to block her strike with his sword, so he is still perfectly fine. To make matters worse, he also managed to slash Alicia across the chest during their clash, so she ragdolls and begins falling to the ground. Drell mocks Alicia and says a fake hero like her with no ambition never stood a chance against him, but mid-fall, she tells him that he's the one who lacks ambition. He is so convinced that the hero legend must have been fake because he was so much weaker than the Dark Beast Lords, and he never once stopped to wonder whether it was just a skill issue. Hearing Alicia call him a weakling enrages Drell so much that he blindly charges towards her, but Alicia remains unfazed and tells him he might also want to get his eyes checked, because when she attacked earlier, she wasn't aiming for his body. Her real target was his sword. Drell ignores her and raises his blade to deal the final blow, but just as he was about to swing it, it suddenly shatters in his hands. He can't believe what just happened since it should be impossible to shatter a regalia like this, and Alicia admits that she's not sure how she managed to damage it either, but she could hear tiny screams coming from his sword every time they clashed blades, so she knew it could be broken. Hearing that, Tala remembers that she struck Drell's sword with the hammer of Haydn earlier in the battle, and even though it didn't destroy it in one swing, it must have done significant damage. Alicia is still falling, so Nell runs up and catches her before she hits the ground, and she seems to be doing all right. However, the same can't be said for Drell because his entire body is made of dark ichor right now, and now that his regalia has been broken, Vorden must have lost all faith in him by now, so it will be interesting to see what happens. All of a sudden, the dark ichor begins to erupt out of Drell's body as his flesh is broken down, and it's clear that Vorden no longer wishes to support Drell, so he is reclaiming his dark ichor at the expense of Drell's life. He screams out in pain as his body is ripped apart piece by piece, and he begs Vorden not to leave him because he hasn't destroyed the hero legend yet, but it's far too late for that. In his final moments, Drell thinks back on everything he has done, and deep down, he realizes that the reason he hated the prophecy so much was because it gave Margot false hope and led him to his demise. That's why Drell ended up making a deal with Vorden in exchange for his and Margot's survival. But looking at himself now, he wonders why he took it so far. Before long, Drell's body completely disintegrates, leaving nothing but a cloud of dark ichor mist and Drell's broken regalia behind. However, while Drell may be gone, Alicia is still worried that Vorden might still do something to attack, and she knows she wouldn't be able to stop him. But just then, Clen shows up, and he tells her she doesn't need to worry about that because Vorden isn't the type of beast who's willing to handle things like this personally. And as for the dark ichor, it doesn't possess any real power without a host, so it will probably just float back to Vorden sooner or later. Alicia is relieved to hear that, and she's also glad to see that Clen decided to keep Luna around after all. Moments later, Tala walks over and she is overwhelmed with joy upon seeing her son for the first time in weeks. She drops everything and runs over to embrace him, but Clen tells her to stop right where she is. Alicia begins worrying that Clen might refuse to return Luna to his mother, but that's not the case. He simply thinks it would be fitting for a future king to return to his mother on his own. So he sets Luna down on the ground and tells him to walk over to her. Tala is amazed to see her little boy standing on his own 2 feet, and she is brought to tears as he makes his way over to her. The sight of mother and son being reunited is wholesome, but Alicia finds it ironic because Clen was the one who destroyed the city and pretty much kidnapped Luna in the first place. Moments later, the exhaustion from her long battle catches up with Alicia, so she falls over and lays down on the grass. Rode and Nelleru rush over to check on her because they think her injuries might be fatal, but she tells them there's nothing to worry about. She says wounds like this won't be enough to kill her, so instead of worrying about her, she wants Rode to go inform the soldiers down below that Drell has been defeated. Rode understands, so he gets up to go grab Drell's broken regalia and rushes down the hill to spread the news of Drell's death. Clen watches as Rode runs off, and he's actually quite happy with how things turned out in the end, but he intends to hold onto the Book of Toa for a while, at least until he can figure out the truth about it. Just then, one of Vorden's avatars shows up behind him and says he's going to regret what he has done because the legend of Toa will soon come to pass. Clen doesn't know what this legend of Toa is, but he certainly doesn't want to learn about it from Vorden, so he uses his shadows to kill the familiar. This chapter has officially come to a close, but the story is still far from over because there's still a lot for Clen to learn about the humans. Rode marches out onto the battlefield and loudly yells to let everyone know that Drell has been defeated by the hero Alicia, and as proof, he holds up Drell's shattered regalia for all to see. As soon as the soldiers from Drell's army realize that their commander really is dead, they lose all motivation to keep fighting because they know they stand no chance. The army begins retreating and Rode doesn't want any more bloodshed, so he orders his men to stand down and let the enemy leave. The news spreads all throughout the battlefield, and even men who are actively engaged in battle stop what they were doing and put their swords away as soon as they receive the message. Oh, in case you were wondering what happened to Nay, she's just been laying in a stack of hay the entire time, and she isn't really sure what she should do now that the war is over. As for Gart, he witnessed the entire battle unfold from a distance, and now that he has seen all there is to see, he starts flying away to report what he learned. Meanwhile, over by the lake, the head priest of the kingdom has just seen the blood sphere holding Clevites, and for some reason, one of his guards thought it would be a good idea to try to touch it. The priest pulls the guard's hand away and tells him he can't just randomly touch stuff like this. Whatever is in there is still alive, and for whatever reason, it is choosing not to come out, and the priest would like to keep it that way. So he tells his men to make sure no one gets anywhere near this thing or so much as looks at it. Meanwhile, back in the ruins of Haydn, Alicia, Nell, and Clen are all waiting in one of the houses that were left standing, and Nell has just finished bandaging Alicia up. She doesn't really need all the bandages since Clen already healed her, but it'd be suspicious if people found out she wasn't injured anymore. However, even with her injuries gone, the pain from the wounds she suffered is still somehow afflicting her, and it's so unbearable that it's hard for her to focus. Clen tells Alicia that he had to heal a fatal wound in an instant to keep her alive, so of course it would be painful. But aside from that, he had to let Alicia bleed a little so no one would know about the Dark Ichor. He plans to keep that a secret for as long as possible, so he asks Nell to make sure she doesn't tell anyone about it. Alicia asks Clen if he thinks what Drell said about a race of true humans and how they were the only ones capable of becoming true heroes was the truth, but Clen has no idea. All he knows for certain is that the name Toa is of incredible importance to the legend, and the book has been manipulating the kings of Haydn for generations at this point, so the secrets of the original legend must be hidden within it. Unfortunately, Clen hasn't been able to read it because it is locked. When the book spawned, it came with a key, so Clen tried opening it to figure out what was written inside, but to his surprise, the key didn't work. The logical conclusion is that the key he has must open a similar book elsewhere in the world, but where that may be and how many such books there are is a complete mystery. Just then, there's a knock at the room door, and the three are informed that the queen would like to meet them, so they head over to the castle to see her. Most of the castle was destroyed during Clevites' attack, but fortunately, the throne room is still intact, so they all gather there. She thanks them for taking the time to meet with her, and they must already have a good idea of why she called them here. First, she wants to offer her deepest thanks to them because without their help, Haydn would have been completely destroyed. However, Nell seems to be really nervous for some reason, and out of nowhere, she starts apologizing to Tala. Tala is really confused, so she asks why Nell is acting like this, but Clen says it's nothing to be worried about since no matter how much they tell her otherwise, Nell can't stop crying thinking of herself as someone unworthy of feeding the future king. Tala walks up to Nell and tells her she would never think of her as unworthy because Nell is her savior. The entire time Luna was missing, one of Tala's biggest concerns was that Luna might go hungry without his mother around to feed him, so you can't imagine how relieved she was to find out that Nell has been taking care of him in her place, and Nell says it's an honor to hear Tala say that. After that, Tala tells everyone that if there's anything they want, then they should feel free to ask, whether it be land, money, or even a title. Alicia starts giving it some serious thought since the idea of a title sounds pretty good, but Clen already knows what to ask for. He says that he wants to work here in a castle as Luna's magic instructor. The end.